Warhammer x LOTM, The Black Emperor by author Chao Emo. Chapter 1001-1017. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. And those who want to support me, I have a Patreon channel, get early access to video on Patreon. 1001 The divine artifact bestowed by the Black Emperor is powerful and dangerous. Noyan Khan, Great Khan has ordered us to wait on orbit. Shibin Khan offered a reminder. We are white scars, and we adapt to the situation, Hasek said. Open black lens bracket. Our Lord's oracle must be fulfilled, close black lens bracket. Great Khan ordered me to establish a blockade line, and I have received his signal of authority. Even if we wanted to go to orbit, the etheric barrier would prevent the drop pods and landing craft from entering, Shibin said. Hasek nodded and looked at Storm Seer. Although Storm Seer was sent back to his homeworld to Shigoris after the Council of Nikaya, and even included Great Khan's most trusted gender own, Hasek's Khanate has always retained Storm Seer. I can light up a safe spot in the city, but only a few people can go there. I will go with Tagan, Hasek explained, looking at the puzzled Khans under his command. He comes from another Khanate and can bear witness to my journey. I disobeyed Great Khan's orders for his own sake. Tagan and the other Khans silently accepted their Noyan Khan reasoning. Prepare for teleportation. After Hasek issued the command, he immediately turned on the communicator and sent a message to Tagan. A moment later, Hasek and Tagan, both wearing Pluto-type Terminator armor, walked onto the teleportation platform together. A crackling force field rose from between the adamantite pillars, covering the entire hexagonal area. A blinding flash of lightning tore the two bodies away. The electric light disappeared, and Hasek and Tagan looked around. The ruins lay scattered under the dim sky, and the magnificent pyramid-shaped tower, destroyed by flames, stood like giant corpses all around. A low growl of thunder rolled in from afar, and lightning streaked all around. Hasek bent down and picked up a glass of dust, tiny shards of glass slipping from his fingertips. It's hard to imagine that this was once the City of Light, Tizka. Tagan took a deep breath of the air, still smelling of embers, and spoke with a fiery tone. The City of Kings is the greatest city of light. Hasek scattered the glass dust on the ground and stopped discussing the matter with Tagan. He had already deeply admired the Black Emperor when he learned that Tagan was still known as Harlan Swinsalan. Even though he was unaware that the Black Emperor was the only true god, his fanatical worship was no less than that of any true god's believer. A buzzing sound. Hasek thought of the characteristics of the spirit-eating bees mentioned in the documents given by the Black Emperor. They have no physical form. Turn off the automatic sensory system and use your eyes to see. The armored scaffold showed no signs of life or nearby signals. Hasek and Tagan had a sudden thought and instantly deactivated the aiming matrix and environmental compensation mechanism on their helmet displays. In the pure Astartes vision, devoid of armor, they saw dozens of eerie figures emerging from the ground, like ghosts rising from graves. Mask, Hasek reminded him, raising his left arm as the explosives roared into action. The diamond bullet easily pierced the spirit-eating bee's swollen abdomen, immediately detonating its massive size. A casual strike would not have caused any damage to the incorporeal spirit-eating bees. However, each hit with the harvest skill, regardless of the body part struck, is equivalent to hitting the enemy's vital point and weak point, causing considerable damage. If the harvest hits a real weakness and causes real damage, it can be a one-hit kill in most cases. Even if the opponent has strong defense, it is difficult to withstand such an attack 3 times in a row. A cluster of dark green eyes moved, staring at Hasek and Tagan. The spirit-eating bees' swollen heads, their mouthparts ticking as they did in life, radiate an eerie glow. Their tattered, wide wings, thin as cicada wings, fluttered rapidly without raising a single speck of dust. A trembling, curved spike sprang from the end of their swollen abdomens, shimmering with a faint light that had never existed in their lives, reflecting the psionic energy of the past, pressing down like dark clouds. The spirit-eating bees' bodies were hunched and twisted, but they were still twice the size of the Astartes, who were wearing Terminators' armor. Hasek's eyes narrowed as he looked at the phosphorescent, wrinkled body. Reaper can see through the surface to the deep interior, which is as clear and transparent as glass. A ghostly green light flickered with an ominous glow. Open black lens bracket. Indeed, as my lord said, the spirit-eating bees' weakness lies in their swollen chests, not in the heads that are typical of other creatures. Close black lens bracket. Reaper, Hasek swung his right arm with a halberd, slashing at spirit-eating bee's swollen chest. Bang! The spirit-eating bees exploded with a roar, dispersing into shimmering clouds. The bursting fragments flashed with dazzling brilliance, exploding into a vortex of energy accompanied by a piercing hiss. The shockwave whipped up a cloud of dust, and the crisp sound of shattering glass echoed throughout the square. Call! A biting wind howled as Tagan put on the bronze mask. The spirit-eating bees cried out in unison, drifting backward before burrowing into the ruins, trying to retreat underground. Conspirer, Tagan held the icy mask in his hands, infusing it with spirituality through his fingertips. A dark green mist suddenly rose up, transforming into a strange, large door. Creak! The illusory door opened wide, and vines stretched out in eager anticipation. Hasek instinctively sensed danger and moved away. Out of the corner of his eye, he could vaguely see huge bone spikes piled together. Hasek suddenly felt as if his consciousness was being haunted by vengeful spirits. He spread his spirituality, and a wall of flames rose up with a roar, enveloping his entire body. At the same time, he ascended sequentially into the Thelema third-layer state of mind, isolating himself from the piercing howls. Looking out through the burning wall of fire, Hasek saw dark blue vines growing wildly and tightly wrapping around the spirit-eating bees' bodies. The spirit-eating bees writhed wildly, their ethereal silhouettes rippling across the water. The vines tightened, coiling around the spirit-eating bees like giant pythons, and the waves suddenly subsided. The vines dragged the ghostly spirit-eating bees toward the bronze door, like a giant python leading its prey back to its hibernation lair. Creak! Hundreds of spirit-eating bees vanished, and the illusory great door slowly closed. A cold wind swept through, and the wall of flames shook violently. Open black lens bracket. This is simply a divine artifact, close black lens bracket. Tagan's thoughts were sluggish. He composed himself and stiffly ripped the bronze mask off his face. His face was covered in frost, and his lips were bluish-purple. Tagan sealed the bronze mask with a spiritual wall while putting the helmet on his face. As his life support system functioned, his body temperature gradually rose. Open black lens bracket. The artifacts bestowed by Lord Nimrod are powerful, but they also consume a great deal of energy, and are even dangerous. Close black lens bracket. Hasek pondered, as if he had realized something. On a whim, he restarted the environmental compensation mechanism. The moment the auger array came back online, he saw the runes flashing on the helmet display. He warily raised his weapon. Not the Keshig, nor the Thousand Suns, nor the Wolves. Bolter roared and thundered, as a barrage of bullets rained down on the two. 1002. I discovered Horus's weakness. Tagan was a moment too slow before restarting auger. Auspex, with his enhanced vision, captured the leader. Khan. His face was distorted, his bones were long and narrow, and his chin was thick, blunt, and rigid. His hair was shaved completely, revealing numerous scars. His eyes were yellowish, like solidified milk, and the skin at his temples was taut, with bulging veins throbbing incessantly. It's strange that Khan is here. The World Eaters, who were not present on the battlefield in Burning of Prospero, have suddenly appeared and are now attacking them. Leading the World Eaters is even Angren's Primarch's attendant, Captain Khan, commander of the 8th Assault Company. That's right, Hasek said. Therefore, we must retreat, and then track them down to find out what they are doing here. 17. He said this as he raised the bolt pistol and pulled the trigger. The diamond bullet whistled through the air and, precisely, struck the robust helmet of the Mark IV Extreme Power Armor. The Harvest attack ripped apart World Eaters' helmets, blasting their heads into a cloud of blood mist. Hasek and Tagan retreated rapidly at the same time, while continuously launching attacks on the enemy. Guided by his spiritual intuition, Conspirer, Tagan locked onto the enemy before the aiming array could fire the explosive projectile. Every bomb hit the enemy precisely. The blue-white armor covered in brownish-red filth shattered, and the shockwave knocked their bodies off balance. Conspirer kept changing its trajectory, adjusting its center of gravity and changing direction before the overwhelming firepower locked onto it. The deadly bullets almost all grazed past his armor, and the few that did hit were deflected by the Pluto-type Terminator armor. By the time they had retreated 1 kilometer, Tagan had already claimed the lives of 4 World Eaters. But he showed no pride in his kills, because Hasek was far more terrifying. Every attack he launched was precise and deadly, reaping one World Eater after another. Tagan's eyes suddenly widened. Hasek's explosive bomb had failed to kill the enemy for the first time. The bomb struck Khan's left shoulder armor, causing him to stagger and splatter blood onto his temple. Blood splattered across the smooth skin, disrupting the series of regular nail marks on the sun acupoint. In another legion, these would symbolize long service, but in World Eaters, they represent implants fixed in the skull. Roar! Khan roared furiously, as if gasoline had been poured onto a flame. Adrenaline surged wildly, driving the killing robot to rampage. Khan's speed suddenly increased, leaving the other World Eaters behind and closing the distance between him and the two. Reaper's eyes turned iron black, and Khan's humanoid form in his vision suddenly changed. The raging fire of the war hounds roared as they attacked. Amidst the raging flames, a crescent-shaped wolf's head held across his chest. Open black lens bracket a weakness, close black lens bracket. As Reaper pondered this, he pointed his gun at Khan's chest. Boom! The blue and white armor shattered, and amidst the blood mist, Reaper seemed to sense something. He shut down Augur Auspex, staring at the fallen iron pendant with the naked eye. It was sculpted as a wolf's head howling at the crescent moon, its entire body black as if charred in fireworks. Open black lens bracket decoration, close black lens bracket. No. Khan carried it with him, and my spiritual intuition was stirred. Hasek marked the direction of the pendant's fall on the tactical interface, then opened the communicator and spoke to Togan. That iron pendant is very special. I'll lure Khan and the other World Eaters away, and you'll take it back. Okay, Togan replied. Hasek shut down his communicator. The veteran, provoker, recalled the information about Khan and the World Eaters in his mind and then called out. Khan, you and the World Eaters are like dogs, willingly accepting the label of butcher's nails. What did you get? Does your father love you? Has he stopped slaughtering you? Khan stopped and was about to pick up the moon wolf when he suddenly heard a piercing sound. He's just a butcher, he's not as good as Lord Nimrod. His legion is hopeless, admit it, you know it in your heart. World Eaters, you all know that. Roar. The butcher's nails in the minds of the World Eaters buzzed like the snarling of furious insects, and their eyes turned blood red. Khan's sanity was consumed by the crimson, and the chainsaw axe roared and thundered. He took the lead and strode towards Hasek. The World Eaters followed closely in his footsteps, stepping over the pendant and chasing after, provoker. Hasek retreated while constantly provoking and attracting the World Eaters. His explosives, precisely, traced arcs as they flew toward Khan. Bang! Hasek saw two more clouds of blood erupt from Khan's body, and thought they would at least knock him to the ground. But Khan's speed did not slow down at all. Instead, he roared and pounced on him like a wounded and angry warhounds. Reaper's precision attack failed for the first time. The bomb grazed past the bronze body, which was splattered with blood. Hasek stared at Khan as he drew closer, feeling a faint, needle-like pain in his temples. Throughout the battle, he has repeatedly used precision and harvest, which consume a great deal of spiritual energy. Although he has quickly killed the enemy, he has also expended a considerable amount of energy. As Reaper pondered, hundreds of fiery crows rapidly swirled around him. With a thought, the fire crows took flight, most of them attacking Khan. The dozens of World Eaters in the front row were overwhelmed by the crows, and the blue and white armor of a dozen or so people exploded, their charred bodies falling to the ground. Boom boom boom. A series of fire crows slammed into Khan. Bang! His naked, bronze body crashed into the dusty ruins of Tizca. Warlock! Khan cursed in disgust. Hasek did not reply. Togan's voice came through his communicator. I've already received the iron pendant. Reaper swung his right arm, and a flaming spear appeared out of thin air. Hasek leapt onto the spear, the flaming spear sank, and then exploded with a bang. He sped past World Eaters like a fiery meteor. Hasek met with Togan at the ruins of a pyramidal tower and received the iron pendant from him. Reaper stared at the crescent-shaped wolf head, becoming increasingly certain of his judgment. He ordered Togan to be on guard, then rapidly struck the ground with his guando, a type of halberd, setting up the Euclidean rune. Hasek holds the iron pendant in both hands and prays to the Black Emperor. My lord, I obtained an iron pendant from Khan. As he recited the prayer for the third time, the black mist engulfed his body. When he opened his eyes again, he had arrived in the mysterious land of black mist. The Black Emperor, seated high on his throne, waved his hand, and the pendant fell into his palm through his sleeve. It is a moon wolf. It was once Horus's armor ornament, which was knocked off his shoulder armor by a stray bullet during the Battle of Barkern. As a souvenir of that war, he gave it to Magnus, who used the synesthetic bond between the Moonwolf and its original master to try to prevent Horus from falling into depravity. Nimrod looked at Reaper and said, your feeling is right. The Moonwolf is indeed Horus's weakness. To prevent it from being exploited, he sent Khan to Prospero to retrieve the Moonwolf. Unexpectedly, helping Jagatai to Prospero brought me an unexpected reward. I discovered Horus's weakness. If we really run into Horus, it would give us another trump card. As Nimrod pondered, memories of Khan's quest to retrieve the moon wolf flashed through his mind, and suddenly his eyes lit up. Greater than. Chapter 1003 The power bestowed upon heretical believers by false gods is ultimately inferior to the power bestowed by the true God. Nimrod recalls that after Menes Caliston, the fourth fellowship commander of the Thousand Sons, lost contact with the Legion, he led Revel Evita and a small squad back to Prospero to seek the truth and search for survivors. He was ambushed by the World Eaters led by Khan, and a squad of Thousand Sons, along with Evita, was killed. Menes himself was captured by Khan and subjected to brutal torture. Open black lens bracket saving Menezes would grant him the fourth fellowship close black lens bracket Thousand Sons. One Nimrod's obsidian eyes burn with the flames of ambition. He recalled that before Menes was killed by Khan, he believed that Magnus and the Legion deserved their fate. This shows that his loyalty to Gene Father was not unwavering. You and Tagan, find a way to rescue the Thousand Sons who have been captured by Khan and his men. Follow your will. Hasek respectfully complied, then asked, puzzled. My lord, in the battle with Khan, I sensed his extraordinary vitality. After Khan was implanted with butcher's nails, he only found pleasure in slaughtering his enemies. His love of killing was so deep that it even attracted the attention of the evil god in war, Nimrod said. Last year in the Battle of Istvan III, he fought against the loyalist sons of Horus, Garvil Loken. Loken slammed him onto a rebel vehicle, and the blade went through his chest, he would have died. Nimrod learned from Akurduana's report that Khan had fought a battle similar to that of the Losen. But he has already embarked on the eightfold path of the blood god, and he has received the blessing of the evil god. Horus knew this, so he gave Khan a kill counter, which is now mounted on his helmet visor, and entrusted him with the task of retrieving the moon wolf. He accepted the task, saying, "Thank the gods, I will now be free to undertake a mission that brings me even greater joy in this great undertaking." Of course, Nimrod also knew that for Khan to accept this mission, more important than his faith in the gods and Warmaster's orders was to find a way to cure Butcher's nails, the Thousand Sons healing device. However, after learning that the device had been destroyed, he refused Menezes' help, completely gave up on treatment, and devoted himself to pursuing the Eightfold Blood Path. As Nimrod spoke, he transmitted knowledge about chaos and related topics to Hasek via thought impulses. Hasek narrowed his eyes, processing the knowledge flooding his mind. Chaos, Korn. Heretics. He shouted angrily. Chaos gods are nothing but false gods of war. The Black Emperor is the only true god. The power that false gods bestow upon heretics can never match the power given by the true god. Hasek knew that in the past, there was a significant gap between his combat strength and that of Khan, Sigismund, and others, but now he had completely overwhelmed Khan in the battle. If he hadn't expended too much spiritual energy dealing with the spirit-eating bees and quickly killing the World Eaters, and if he hadn't had hundreds of World Eaters around him, and more importantly, if he hadn't known they were heretics, he could have certainly killed the false god's followers. Black mist surged and enveloped Hasek. When he came to his senses, he was back in the ruins of the library in Tizca. After Hasek released Euclidean rune, he came to Tagan. A new mission. Lord Nimrod has ordered us to rescue Menes Caliston, the fourth fellowship commander of the Thousand Sons. Tagan looked at Hasek. Prospero has an ethereal barrier, and the warp storm is interfering, making it difficult even for Astropath to communicate. Even if warp is calm, intergalactic communication still requires a series of processes such as relay stations and quire decoding, and it is impossible to be so fast. Lord Nimrod must possess a communication method far beyond astral, perhaps some kind of Beander ability. Hasek was someone he trusted, and thus was informed of this communication method. Lord Nimrod, whatever you command, I will do with all my might. The two immediately set off for the location where they had first encountered the World Eaters. 3 kilometers from the battleground, the two stopped and took turns using augur. Auspex, the naked eye, spirit vision, and the hunter's perspective confirmed that there were no World Eaters lying in ambush nearby. Your provocation, like walking a dog, has driven World Eaters to their senses, Tagan exclaimed. More importantly, it's about intelligence gathering, as a conspirer, Hasek said. After becoming a Reaper, the provocation increased slightly, but it didn't amount to a qualitative change. Whether they can be effective or not, the World Eaters are no longer like the war hounds of the past, who combined passion and discipline. They have degenerated into undisciplined killing freaks. We split up, examine the traces left by the World Eaters, and find their lair. You follow the trail they took, and I search the surroundings. All right. Tagan watched Hasek step onto the blazing white spear. Accompanied by trailing fireworks, it roared past at an altitude 3 times its own size. Lord Hasek now possesses many amazing abilities. He must have received one more Lord Nimrod's blessing than I did, apparently during the war with Lady Hera. Close black lens bracket Tagan thought to himself. Open black lens bracket each time power is bestowed, it greatly enhances our abilities. Close black lens bracket. Tagan gently touched the spiritual wall seal and the bronze mask hanging at his waist. Open black lens bracket. If I can capture a fragment of Magnus's soul, I will gain the same power as Lord Hosik, close black lens bracket. More importantly, I will complete Lord Nimrod's sacred mission. He shut down Augur Auspex, then switched to the hunter perspective. Tagan's senses heightened dramatically. He could clearly hear the pumping of his two hearts and even the faint ticking of the mouthparts of the spirit-eating bees emanating from underground. The footprints on the ground quickly became clear, and the shallow footprints buried by ashes slowly emerged. Even the distribution of dust became exceptionally clear. His nose twitched slightly. The subtle differences in the scent of the World Eaters' corpses became apparent. One of the World Eaters, wielding a two-handed chainsaw axe, reeked of blood, reminding him of his recent encounter with Khan. Another World Eater, holding a chainsaw axe in each hand, had the strongest metallic and sweaty smell. Tagan strides forward, following the trail of World Eaters, aided by the information provided by his keen observations that combined sight and smell. The detailed observation skill is gained during the hunter phase, but it is not significantly enhanced during the provoker and pyromaniac phases. However, after becoming a conspirer, along with the improvement in information gathering, the accompanying enhancement of the five senses and spiritual perception resulted in a significant increase. Tagan's ability to grasp the environment even surpasses that of the storm seers in their understanding of it. He walked through craters burning with ashes, treading over rubble and debris, his boots crushing shards of glass. The smells of blood, metal, and savage sourness grew stronger, and Tagan knew he was getting closer and closer to World Eaters' base of operations. After passing a collapsed residential building, he came to the ruins of a pyramid-shaped tower. Hosik wielding a Guandao Noyan Khan stands at the entrance of the tower, with a small team of World Eaters lying at his feet. Thump thump thump. A team of World Eaters roared as they charged out of the pyramid tower. Conspirer, Tagan was engulfed in flames, and with a wave of his hand, a series of fireballs shot out. The fireball's tail flames, like a rocket launch, dragged Tagan's body, rapidly closing the distance to the entrance of the tower. Boom boom boom. The fireball slammed into the blue and white armor, blasting their bodies black. Conspirer, Tagan was dragged into World Eaters by manipulating flames, where he drew his curved power sword and pressed the rune. As the dazzling blue energy field surged forth, he swept his sword horizontally. The blade hissed as it pierced the blue and white armor, blasting out bursts of blood mist. Tagan kills a squad of World Eaters, and then sees the blazing white spear carrying Hosik whistling as it shoots into the pyramid tower. He frowned, then strode forward, chasing after Hosik. The two advanced rapidly, one after the other, streaks of flame shooting out and claiming the lives of one World Eater after another, their steps never faltering. Bang! Hosik slammed to the ground, shaking his head slightly in regret. Open black lens bracket. Unfortunately, the heretics did not return. Close black lens bracket. He kicked the big door open. Hosik stepped into darkness's interior and immediately saw an Astartes strapped to a chair. He was completely naked, with his wrists, neck, chest, and ankles tightly bound by iron hoops. 1004 My 5000 warriors will serve Lord Nimrod. Menes Caliston, the company commander of the 1000 Sons, 4th Fellowship, had skin covered with hundreds of bruises and abrasions. Even Astartes' superhuman physique was covered in wounds from Khan's countless tortures. Menez's breathing was soft and weak, and his chest, supported by his ribcage, throbbed with a dull ache. His primary heart had long since stopped beating, but his secondary heart was still pumping, slowly healing his injuries. You are not. His dry lips resembled crumpled parchment. You don't have that wet, sour smell of the old hunting dogs. Sky Owl School, 1000 Sons, consciousness weakly spread around. You are not like breathing beasts. I am Hosik of White Scars, and he is Tagan. Hosik sized up 1000 Sons, who sat in the chair and had short, dark brown hair. His aristocratic, slender nose bridge rested precisely in the center of his thin cheekbones, and a mark was tattooed on his right temple, outlining the shape of an owl. Those are the rune markings for Sky Owl School. Hosik looked at the person whose appearance matched the description in the Black Emperor's edict and knew that the person before him was the one he was meant to rescue. He swung his combat sword, and the 4 iron hoops snapped one by one, falling to the ground. You are the company commander of Menes Caliston, the 1000 Sons, 4th Fellowship. It's me, Menez replied. We have come to rescue you on the orders of Lord Nimrod. Nimrod, sir, Menez repeated in confusion. Because of the friendly relations between the two legions, he knew quite a bit about the White Scars, who were outside the empire. He knew that Hosik was the head of Noyan Khan, and that his Khanate had the most White Scars. His position, along with Chief Storm Seer Gender On and Chin Shah, the leader of the Keshig Guard, are the 3 highest-ranking members under Jagat Khan. Why would he obey Lord Nimrod's orders to save himself? As Menes pondered, the lumen lamp on the wall turned on with a snap. The sudden bright light made his mind even more confused, and his swollen eyes trembled painfully. A dozen seconds later, Menes gently opened his eyes, the dried blood clots on his eyelids trembling with a needle-like pain. He saw a muscular warrior clad in Pluto-type Terminator armor, far more robust than any white scars Menes had ever seen. He didn't even resemble the tall and slender white scars, only the scars on his face and the guandao in his hand revealed his origins. Can you walk? Menes looked in the direction of the voice and saw another muscular man, white scars, who was smaller than Hasik. He carried at his waist another weapon favored by white scars, a curved blade weapon. Of course, I'm not crippled. Menes swayed as he stood up from his chair. You just said that you came to rescue me on Lord Nimrod's orders. That's right. Hasik nodded. What about your studies? I only took a small squad back to the home planet, Menes explained. The others are not in the Frieza system, they are on standby in the nearby Skano system, the Kappa Ascension system, and the Halacrete system. East Side, Triangle. Hasik asked. I remember your flagship was called Geometry. 97. That's right. Menez's face lit up. Each 1,000 Suns is a top scholar in a certain field, some directly related to combat, and Dorkara is a master of psionic item crafting. There are also people who are good at planetary planning and construction, and Ignis is a leader in this field. My specialty is geometry. Many of the magnificent buildings in Tizca were drawn by me, stroke by stroke. His wounds began to scab over, his tendons gradually recovered, and his bones began to repair the cracks within his tissues. It is the gathering of scholars and masters from all fields that has shaped Tizca into the City of Light. Your city has been destroyed by wolves and reduced to ruins, Togan warned. Even if Tizca still exists, it is not as good as King City. Menes did not argue, his expression was somber. That's right. Tizca is now nothing but a post-apocalyptic ruin. You can still make a difference, Hasik said. Your learning is a powerful force, and your brothers in arms need your leadership. My father, he betrayed the Empire, Menes said bitterly. Lord Nimrod will give you a chance, we have come to save you on his orders, Hasik said. Menez's eyes lit up. Lord Nimrod and his father had been staunch political allies, firmly pushing forward the librarian plan. He was magnanimous and accepted the warriors, whose legion had been wiped out. If anyone can offer them hope, it is Lord Nimrod. The 5,000 warriors I trained with followed me back, they are in 3-star systems to the east of our home planet. We will obey Lord Nimrod's command and atone for the sins of our father and the legion. Hasik smiled and nodded. You made a wise choice. You will find that Lord Nimrod's mastery of the mysteries of geometry surpasses that of you and everyone else, including Magnus. He recalled the Euclidean rune, created by the Black Emperor. Menezes paused. Hathor said the same thing. Countless glittering triangles, squares, and pentagrams flashed rapidly in his eyes, as brilliant as a sea of stars, illuminating his frail body. Let's go. I want to see Lord Nimrod immediately. We still have a mission, Hasik said. We need to see Magnus first. Father. Menez's pupils dilated suddenly. Based on the information revealed by the investigators and interrogators, he knew that Jean-Father had left the physical universe. Is he still, Prospero? He asked, his mind filled with mixed emotions. He came seeking the truth, but arrived at a terrifying conclusion. The father committed a crime. The father dismissed them. Menezes didn't know whether he wanted to ask Magnus the whole truth in person, or he resisted the terrible truth. A part of his soul lingers in his homeland. Lord Nimrod commanded me to bring him back. Menezes remained silent for several seconds, then said, this is perhaps the best outcome. He strode outside, saying, I'll go with you. I have something else to ask. Conspirer, Togan stared at Menezes, his mind racing with thoughts. He, along with Hasik and Menes, had just stepped out of the ruins of the tower when they saw a dazzling beam of light shooting into the sky. Menes gazed at the brilliant, dazzling beam of light, scorching hot, shooting straight into the sky. A chain reaction of shimmering silver light ignited the entire sky, followed by a thunderous roar, and spiderweb-like veins of light tore through the thick layers of ash clouds. The dark curtain dissipated, revealing iridescent colors. Avita, your adjutant? Hasik asked. Yes, he tore the ethereal barrier apart with psychic energy. Hasik and Togan exchanged a glance, reading the same thought in each other's eyes. Their father had returned to orbit. The timing was perfect. As the direction of the shining light your reflecting caves. Menezes was taken aback. How did you know? The existence of reflecting caves was unknown to Avita and the other Thousand Sons, only those attending the First Council knew of it. Lord Nimrod told me. Lord Nimrod. Menezes was increasingly puzzled. He remembered that his father had not told Nimrod and his brothers about reflecting caves. Let's go see your father, Hasek said. 1005 Magnus, how did you do that? Tiska. The passageway beneath Secret Eye Square is quite bizarre, filled with countless passages and caves within the riddled rock strata. Some passages slope gently, while others drop sharply like cliffs. Menes Calliston, the platoon leader of the Thousand Sons, 4th Fellowship, was wearing a robe found inside the Tower of Pyramids, with a black raven's head embroidered on the chest. He used his sky owl technique to explore his surroundings, but the scorching tunnel was distorted by the radiant embers, and he could only control a range of 50 meters around himself. We'll split up and search the reflecting caves, Hasek said, his voice echoing through the silent passageway. Toggin, you're with Calliston. Good. Menes caught a hint of hidden expectation in the short, sharp voice coming from Toggin's communication grill. Before he could think it through, Toggin had already started walking forward, and he could only follow. The two walked forward for more than 100 meters, one after the other, and suddenly the space in front of them widened. The massive stalactites are covered with turbulent material deposited by accumulated water, and the rock walls are bare. Before Tiska was destroyed, Chief Librarian sent all the psychic crystals from this place onto the warship, Menes said, suppressing the overwhelming sorrow in his voice. He's more like a black crow than Ahriman. Toggin remained silent, while Conspirer followed his spiritual intuition and looked ahead. A 6-meter diameter brass lens, its shattered remains scattered across the ground. The corpses were buried in ashes and metal, the naked bodies were reduced to withered flesh and bare bones. Among hundreds of corpses, a single eye revealed a deep, weary gray. Call. Toggin stared at the enormous figure that suddenly rose up, taller than his father, its withered, hollow body gleaming with cold, ghostly flames. His heart pounded, and he instinctively reached for the curved sword at his waist. You can't hurt me, and I don't intend to hurt you, Magnus said, his weary voice carrying an eerie echo. I just spoke with your father, and he understands the current situation and has chosen his path. His single eye gleamed a warm orange as he looked toward Thousand Sons. Menes, is that you? Father. Menes gazed at the ethereal, hazy figure, its body clad in tattered armor, tears streaming down his face. I never thought I would see you again. His voice, with its intonation and rhythm, was just as varied as it had been in life, interwoven with hundreds of accents. He paused for a few seconds before he remembered. I remember, I sent you away from Prospero. Yes. Menes looked at his dejected and bitter father. What happened? Was it the wolves? I have made a grave mistake, and the Emperor's wrath has descended upon this place. Magnus took a deep breath. Father, explain yourself, Menes pressed. What crime have we committed to deserve this? We have been deceived. The ocean of souls is no place of good. We have fallen into his snare the moment we set foot in it, Magnus said eloquently, like a lecturer taking the stage. Horus was devoured by warp, and I tried to warn Terra, which was precisely my sin. The reason behind all this is pride, and it is pride that devours Horus. If you make a mistake, you should atone for it, Menes said. Magnus thought of the Primarch brothers who had been erased. My father was no magnanimous man, and I have no way back. Moreover, he and the cunning Malkador are by no means innocent, they secretly reconstructed the ancient technology of the xenomorphs. We should have been striving for a great and beautiful future, but now Horus and he are just dancing their own dances on the same path of decay. He sighed softly, there's no future left. Perhaps neither side is worth following. Lord Magnus, you're right, Toggin suddenly interjected. Lord Nimrod is the hope for the future. Son of Jagatai, you don't understand. Magnus laughed loudly. I have witnessed the face of the Weaver of Fate, and he is utterly terrifying. The Primarch is nothing but a puppet on the strings. The future may change, but the outcome will remain the same. No one can escape their destiny, not me, not Nimrod either. Magnus's laughter was tinged with a cold self-mockery and desolation. A rune suddenly appeared on Toggin's eyepiece, and Hasek's voice rang in his ears. I am in position, let's begin. Toggin drew his curved blade. I was ordered to take you back. Since you're not cooperating, I have no choice but to offend you. Instead of activating the disruption field, he quickly sketched a triangle on the ground. Amidst the swirling dust, Menes gazed at the asymmetrical triangle with angles of 11 degrees, 33 degrees, and 136 degrees. He sensed something supernatural in the image, but it was almost imperceptible. If he hadn't dedicated his life to exploring the mysteries of geometry, he would never have discovered the anomalies hidden within the figures. Interesting. Magnus crossed his arms, his eyes gleaming with blue light. A kind of symbol. Upon hearing this, Menezes' chaotic thoughts suddenly cleared. He recalled that every time the First Council convened, his father would set up the Somme sigil to isolate the Ocean of Souls. Jagatai also created a similar symbol. How could this be? There is no information indicating that he possesses the power of the ether. The regular geometric mysteries are not the path that the unruly Khan would pursue. As he pondered, he heard his father say sarcastically, "You think that by saying Primarch is at the mercy of fate you can do anything to me. But I never told you that only Primarch can destroy Primarch. Even the gods' need is to overthrow the immortal empire." Magnus's single eye turned, and for the first time since the day of destruction, its magical eyes shone with brilliance. He did not launch an attack, but slowly sidestepped around the bronze lens wreckage, taking in the movements of the two men with great interest. Togan and Hasek did not launch an attack. Instead, they circled Magnus, sketching out one Euclidean rune pattern after another. In the blink of an eye, they each completed half a lap and switched places. Call. An invisible wind suddenly arose between them. Menes suddenly felt that his connection with the Ocean of Souls had been completely severed. He lost his psychic powers. The single eye of Magnus's soul fragment shimmered with a brilliant purple light, and he could barely sense the presence of the Ocean of Souls. "Where did you get this talisman?" Hasek and Togan did not speak, they acted simultaneously. Conspirer, Togan loosely clenched his left fist, repeatedly compressing the crimson flames, which rapidly condensed into a ball of blazing white fire. He raised his hand, and a fireball hurtled towards Magnus. "You can actually use psionic magic," Magnus exclaimed in surprise. He raised his arm, and his telekinetic energy condensed into an invisible shield in front of him. Boom! The telekinetic shield shattered with a deafening roar, sending sparks flying everywhere. Magnus stared at white scars. Even after suppressing his psychic powers, he was still able to communicate with the Grand Master of the Temple from the Fire Phoenix School. Similar to Caliphus, his psychic powers were suppressed by a strange rune, and his incomplete state meant he didn't even gain the upper hand in the previous confrontation. But he was also an extraordinary warrior. Magnus's ghostly body suddenly rose up and lunged at Togan. With a whooshing sound, Magnus leapt to the right. But the blazing white spear behind him remained fixed on him, locking onto him no matter how he changed direction. With a thought, Magnus created an invisible force field shield that covered his entire body. Rumble! The psionic shield shattered with a bang, and flames erupted into a cloud of eerie green blood mist. A crimson glint appeared in Magnus's single eye as he turned towards the even more powerful Hasek. Khan charged forward. Images flashed through his mind, and he suddenly took a step forward to the left. The blazing white spear whistled past his body and crashed to the ground. Magnus used his Black Raven technique to quickly approach Hasek. He raised his huge fist and slammed it down on Hasek. Hasek's chest caved in, and he flew backward. Just as Magnus was about to give chase, he suddenly stopped. Menes. Just as he was about to continue speaking, he suddenly felt a terrifying, chilling aura rush up his spine from behind. Magnus turned and looked at Togan, who was wearing a bronze mask. The illusory great door creaked open, and dark blue vines spread out from within it. "Magnus, your greatest weakness is your insatiable pursuit of knowledge." Togan's voice turned icy. "You've fallen for my scheme. You had a chance to stop me when we were setting up the symbols, but I knew you wouldn't. If you want to know the secret, you will let us complete the inscription." He took a vial of blood-red potion from Hasek's hand as he walked to his side. "Your psionic power has been weakened." Magnus unleashed his telekinetic power, and one after another, dark blue vines slapped against the shield, producing a piercing crackling sound. "But you, with your past broken body, will feel threatened by Hasek's powerful attack, and you will turn to attack him." Tick-tock. A piercing shriek suddenly rang out, and one after another, spirit-eating bees flew out of the great door, causing Magnus and Menes' expressions to change. Spirit-eating bees feed on psychers, and no one can control them. No one can command the ghostly creatures of the dead. Magnus's single eye flashed, and a burst of flame suddenly rose up, incinerating the 4 spirit-eating bees to ashes. At the same time, his shield, deprived of psionic replenishment, rapidly contracted, and dark blue vines wrapped around his body. "How did you do that?" Togan did not answer his question, but continued to follow Lord Nimrod's orders and finished recounting his complete conspiracy plan. "This is my chance. I have captured you alive, the mighty Crimson King." Conspirer tilted his head back and drank the potion amidst the regretful bluish-gray light flashing in Magnus's single eye. Flames burst forth like fireworks, and ashes fell from the sky. Magnus roared and howled as he was dragged little by little towards the great door by the dark blue vines. Bang! 1006. Why did Lord Nimrod send the white scars to rescue us? Underground at outpost number K39, south of Tizca. Sul Kontep spoke to Cardin Afi, the lieutenant of Order Shadow, and Paladin Guard, commander. The Thousand Sons of the Black Raven School foresaw a massive attack, and the Sky Owl School subsequently confirmed that over 1,000 spirit-eating bees were heading in that direction. The two men's expressions changed. Although the spirit-eating bees were terrifying in life, Thousand Sons Librarian and Order Shadow Royal Court monks can kill several, and strong ones can even take down dozens or even hundreds. Please remember the website for the fastest chapter updates. The real threat is the spirit-eating bees, keen sense of psychic energy. Once they smell food, an endless ocean will engulf the Thousand Sons. The dead spirit-eating bees are even more difficult to deal with. Although psionic energy can harm them, it requires several times the amount of etheric energy. Even more terrifying is that the ground is no longer an obstacle for them. We have no choice but to abandon this settlement, the adjutant said. No, Cardin said, shaking his head. The Wolf orbital bombardment has destroyed the wilderness of Prospero. The nearest settlement is to the west of the city, and most of the people will die from wasteland radiation before they can reach it. This outpost is one of the strongholds that Order Shadow established in the wilderness, and it is also the largest outpost closest to the city of Tizca. After Thousand Sons took over, they developed it into an outpost. Before Prospero met its end, it, along with many other outposts, was planned as a small settlement and construction began. Because of the presence of spirit-eating bees that roam the wilderness, outposts and small settlements outside Tizca have underground facilities to protect them from large-scale attacks. The people of Tizca have barely survived until now thanks to their stored food, but many are too weak from food and water shortages and the hopelessness of being confined in claustrophobic areas to complete their migration through the radioactive wasteland. Sewer frowned, glancing at Order Shadow and sighing inwardly. I shouldn't have listened to him and stayed in Prospero to wait for rescue. If they seize the aircraft and then the ships, at least some of the people will be able to escape. Now all we can do is wait to die. Sul suppressed the raging fire in his heart, knowing that in this critical moment, he should not dwell on the past. The Order Shadows trusted their father too much. No one will come to save us. We can only rely on ourselves. He gathered his thoughts and said, let's leave. Lord Sewer, please reconsider. Thousands upon thousands will die because of your decision, Cardin said. We have no choice. Even if we fight to the death to block the attack, the battle will attract tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands, of spirit-eating bees, Su said coldly. Has the Afi family forgotten the calamity of Tizca? Take immediate action. Afi's expression darkened. He didn't argue anymore and walked away. Just as Sewer was about to give the order, the communicator on his helmet crackled to life. Lord Sir, someone is approaching rapidly. Sewer paused, looking at Order Shadow. Open black lens bracket could it be, close black lens bracket. After thinking for a few seconds, he gave the order. Assemble. Sol said to Order Shadow, someone's coming. Let's go out and see. Amidst the pervasive cold fog, the two walked side by side out of the outpost's large door. Su looked eagerly toward the 11 o'clock position marked, Sky Owl School, by Thousand Sons. Two blazing flames streaked across the sky, rapidly approaching each other. The first man stood atop a blazing white spear, clad in white armor. It's not Order Shadow, it's White Scars. Behind him was a man in a red robe, who turned out to be Menes Calliston, the company commander of the 4th Fellowship. Another White Scars was perched on a long spear behind him. How could White Scars possess such exquisite fire magic? Even Caliphus couldn't do that. As Sewer pondered, two short, sharp explosions rang out, and the three of them crashed to the ground with a thud. Menes swayed, his eyebrows tinged with dark blue frost. Lord Menes. Sewer stepped forward, the fire phoenix technique flowing in his palm. It's no use. Menez's gaze swept over the bronze mask at Hosik's waist, and a scene from not long ago flashed through his mind. After Togan put on the mask, a phantom door appeared out of thin air, from which spirit-eating bees flew out one after another, their outstretched dark blue vines dragging their father into the door. Sol did not stop. His skill in the Fire Phoenix School was second only to Caliphus, the 6th Company Commander, Ola Magma, the 8th Company Commander, and Sobek. A wisp of flame rose from his palm, hovering close to his eyebrows under his precise control, but without actually touching them. The heat emanates and covers the area between the eyebrows. Beep beep. Water droplets fell, but the bluish-black color did not diminish at all. Lord Sewer, the vanguard of the spirit-eating bees is only 3 kilometers away from us. Reluctantly, Sewer withdrew his hand and quickly informed the three of the current situation. Spirit-eating bees are attacking. He looked at Hosik Noyan Khan. I request that you send warriors to help us evacuate. That's exactly what we're here for, Hasek said. We have come to help you on the orders of Lord Nimrod. Saul glanced at Order Shadow, who had come to his side. Lord Nimrod. That's right. Hasek nodded. Prepare psionic spells immediately to tear open the psionic barrier. We will protect you from those ghosts. There are thousands coming, you can't possibly stop them, Sewer said. Excuse me for speaking frankly, but even Lord Jagatai could not do it. They can. Menes glanced at the bronze mask. His icy body trembled slightly. If you don't want to end up like me, don't go with me. Saul gazed intently at the two white scars and nodded slightly. Yes, sir. He watched as the blazing white spear appeared, and the two of them soared into the air. The librarians of Thousand Suns quickly assembled, and ethereal light rose around them, swirling like stars. The flickering silver flames lit up their gauntlets, growing brighter and brighter until they burst forth with a light so intense that even the other Thousand Suns could hardly look directly at them. They raised their arms high, pointing in unison to the sky. A series of brilliant, dazzling beams of light converged and shot straight into the sky. Rumble. Thunder roared and rumbled, and a dazzling silver light swept across a range of thousands of kilometers. The dark curtain that had covered the sky was suddenly torn down, revealing the true colors of the rainbow. Sue withdrew her arms and looked in the direction of the spirit-eating bees. A dark green light suddenly rose up, dyeing the sky a deep green. Call. A sudden gust of cold wind swept up, and he and the Thousand Suns around him all trembled. Saul suddenly remembered Lord Menes's warning and seemed to be deep in thought. Could it be that White Scars possesses some special etheric power? The door is specifically designed to deal with the spirit-eating bees who have died. As he pondered, the top of his head suddenly turned black. The slender white warship descended slowly, followed by a dense swarm of transport ships and gunboats that roared down. Saul climbed onto Stormbird and looked out at the ash wasteland through the narrow window, feeling somewhat dazed. Unexpectedly, we actually escaped Prospero's post-apocalyptic wasteland. But why did Lord Nimrod send White Scars to save us? 1007 gods exist in the world, the Black Emperor is the only true god. In the fourth level of the Nation of Disorder, space, Hasek knelt on one knee in the black mist, holding up a bronze mask with both hands. My lord, in accordance with your command, I have bound the fragments of Magnus's soul within them. Nimrod raised his hand, and the bronze mask fell into his palm. He extended his spirituality, exploring the Death Consul mask that was connected to him. Magnus, enveloped in a bluish-green mist, appeared more solid and chilling than the fragments of the palace's soul. I have obtained 2 of Magnus's soul fragments, and Prospero's is one of his 5 main fragments. Next is, how to utilize them. After a moment's thought, Nimrod decided to stick to his previous plan and wait until he was promoted to Earl of the Fallen, before making a decision. You did a good job. Tagan and Hasek's fates were altered by his corrosion. They were originally planning to launch a rebellion and seize power while Jagatai was on the surface. But just as they were about to seize power, Avatar tore open the ethereal veil, allowing Jagatai to return to the flagship via teleportation. Tagan Khan, who worshipped Horus, was captured alive and later redeemed himself through meritorious service. He is now not only free from the stigma of being a traitor, but has also been promoted to Reaper in Sequence 5. Hasek was the leader of the White Scars. Warrior Noyan Khan was killed by Jagatai, who was fighting amongst themselves in the Legion of Wrath. Now, he has not died in a failed rebellion to seize power. Remembering Tagan's reverence for him, Nimrod instructed, tell Tagan my honorable name and the manner of my prayer. Afterwards, he was ordered to travel to the eastern part of the galaxy with Menes, Sir, and the other Thousand Suns. Prospero belongs to the Prospero sector of the Ultima Segmentum in the Imperial Administrative Divisions, and is relatively close to the Ghoul sector on the eastern edge of the Milky Way. This would not only benefit Corrosion and his forces, but also give them a greater advantage in the war against Alpha and Night Lords, after they gained this additional strength. Hasek asked, my lord, how can I serve you? Nimrod recalled the Battle of Kalayam Gate and realized that Jagata would most likely return to defend Terra, a common choice for most loyal Primarchs upon learning of Horus's betrayal. You will stay with Jagatai for now and await my orders. Open black lens bracket him, I've given Jagatai quite a few offspring, which has saved him a lot of trouble, close black lens bracket. He not only arrived in Prospero a year early, but also did not encounter Mortarion there. Without Hasek, the warrior society within White Scars was too weak to cause any significant trouble, and he was not betrayed. Although Hasek felt regret, he suppressed his eagerness to serve the Black Emperor. Follow your will. Black fog surged and engulfed Hasek. He looked up again, he had returned to the altar of the Qingzi. Hasek arrived at the great door and found Tagan. Tagan, I think you had doubts about many things before. Tagan nodded, thinking of Hasek's real-time communication with Lord Nimrod across countless light years, and the bronze mask that had suddenly appeared and now disappeared. Flames erupted in Hasek's eyes, illuminating his face. Now is the time for you to learn the truth and understand the facts. Come with me. He turned and went inside, Tagan stepping into the cabin that Hasek forbade anyone from entering for the first time. Tagan paused, gazing at the obsidian altar before him, the 33 steps, the 11 burning candles, the black iron scales on his left, and the cast iron books on the tray on his right. While he was being observed, Hasek quickly redeployed the Euclidean rune, and came before Tagan. Today I will tell you the truth. Imperial truth is a complete lie. Gods exist in this world, and the Black Emperor is the only true god. The Black Emperor? Tagan asked. That's right. Hasek's eyes burned brightly. Lord Nimrod is the identity under which the Black Emperor descended to Earth to walk. Black Emperor, Lord Nimrod. Tagan's eyes shone brightly, as if the stars were twinkling before them. 3 hours later, Tagan, having listened to the truth, strode out of the door with his head held high. He finally proved his loyalty to Lord Nimrod, no, his faith in the Black Emperor through his actions. He can follow in the footsteps of the one true God in the world. Tagan accompanied Hasek to the reception room, where Menes Caliston, the 4th Fellowship Commander of 1,000 Suns, and Sul Kontep, the Master of Fire Phoenix School, were already waiting. Lord Hasek, Tagan, Sul said gratefully. Afi asked me to convey his gratitude, saying that you saved tens of thousands of Tizca people. Tagan suppressed the truth that wanted to slip out, you should thank Lord Nimrod. Of course, Suer quickly replied. Without him, we could not have escaped from this wasteland inferno. Menes put on new armor, and Apothecary's treatment had slightly reduced the bluish-black discoloration on his face. His gaze swept over the waists of the two men, but he did not see the mysterious mask. He suppressed the urge to use his Sky Owl technique to investigate and spoke. Now is the time to choose the path for the future. What decision has Lord Jagatai made? Father ordered Navigator to find a way to Terra. He has decided to return to the throne world, Hasek replied. But the turbulence in warp is intensifying, especially on the road to Terra. Until a route is found, white scars will break into smaller groups and harass the traitors. I will meet with Lord Nimrod, and you must come with me, Tagan said. Menes nodded, but Sul frowned. With all due respect, Terra is the eye of the storm. We should return to our home planet and await the command of the Emperor and the Sigillite. Menes knew that Sul's thinking was correct, but he hadn't seen the whole picture. Lord Nimrod, Hasek, and Tagan, how did they capture a fragment of Primarch's soul, and what was their purpose? Lord Nimrod may be the hope for the future. While he was pondering, Hasek spoke up. Terra considers you traitors. Neither the Sigillite nor the Terra Sentinels will trust you. We will not stop atonement because of difficulties, Suer said resolutely. Menes sensed Sul's resolute attitude and ascended to the 6th level of Magnus's state of mind. Everything around him became clear as he used the Sky Owl technique to perceive his shallow thoughts. We will not gain their trust, which means they will expend energy guarding against us. We will not be deployed to key battlefields, we cannot contribute value, nor can we atone for our sins. As Suer's eyes dimmed, Tagan spoke. Lord Nimrod will trust you, and you will use your full strength to strike at the traitors, forces on other battlefields, thus weakening their ability to turn to Terra. Tagan's words struck Suer's heart like a dagger. In that case, I am willing to meet Lord Nimrod with you. 1008 False Emperor shall be punished. The flagship of the Word Bearers Legion, the Ash Chronicle, has its commanders of Iron Warriors, Night Lords, and Alpha gathered on the bridge. Lorgar Aurelian strode into the middle of the crowd and greeted the 3 Primarch brothers. Perturabo, Conrad, Omega, welcome to this gathering. Perturabo glanced somberly at the blasphemous runes painted on the walls, suppressing his doubts. Begin, don't waste time. Conrad Kurz's arms trembled like the wings of a raptor, he had already seen the direction of the river. He glanced discreetly at the safe tower beside him, knowing that the slogan he was about to shout would be repeated endlessly for the next 10,000 years. This is a meaningful gathering beyond the ordinary. Omega shifted its focus from the unfavorable intelligence coming from the eastern galaxy to the current situation. I want to remind you that Nimrod's offensive is more swift than expected. His legion has lost over 20,000 men in the Gordian League and Diamond Star, including the elite headhunters, and even the Lernaean Terminators were nearly wiped out. Lorgar frowned slightly and looked at Omega. My brother, there is no need to worry. The core of the Empire is flawed. Our father's rationalism, which defined imperial truth, was built on the lie of atheism. The Empire was built on dangerous deception. Zoshar stood at the very edge of the Night Lords group, his narrowed eyes sweeping over everyone before finally settling on Lorgar. In Night Lords, from Primarch to Astartes, all despised Terraborn. Although Zoshar became a company commander and an important member of the Night Lords' high-level organization, the Nightbat Council, he was isolated to the outermost layer by the Nostromo race. The only truth in Lorgar's words is that the true god does exist. But he is neither in Terra nor in Warp. The Black Emperor is the only true god. Lorgar smiled and looked at Conrad. Conrad is right, today is destined to be beyond. He walked to the center of the assembly and stood with the three Primarch brothers. Lorgar looked around at the word-bearers and said, "Some of you may be wondering why we abandoned the nearly completed campaign to pacify Garrus. Some people believe that abandoning the allegiance of 1301-20 was in response to the Emperor's rallying order at Istvan v. Quote, the truth is both yes and no. We are indeed going to Istvan, but for a greater cause." His gaze shifted from the word-bearers to the other three warrior legions. "As I just said, the Empire has let us down. The Emperor demanded that the people sacrifice the truth. He has failed all of us." He looked at Perturabo and said, "The empire he built is flawed and too fragile." He looked at Conrad and said, "You are the last person I need to explain myself to, Conrad. You know, his plans will wither away forever, and sweet fruit will never grow on Terra's dead vines." He finally looked at the Omega and Alphas, saying, "Because of the Empire's flaws, it is extremely vulnerable in resisting the alien invasion." The High Priest of Chaos listened intently to the whispers around him. The alien invasion of the human world is increasing day by day. The Greenskins trampled the southern galaxy, and the barbarian tribes of Karadan turned the newly subjugated world into wasteland. The carrion devourers of Khanas V have taken over Vector 9 in a bloody manner. Countless aliens rose up on the corpses of the Empire. Lorgar held his head high. This is the consequence of humanity's rejection of truth. By rejecting chaos, we are courting our own destruction. He pounded his chest forcefully. "I promise you that the new human empire rising from the ashes will be an empire with the faith of justice and the truth of enlightenment. It is an empire declared, commanded, and protected by the incarnations of the gods. It is an empire capable of withstanding blood and fire." As soon as Lorgar finished speaking, Yago Sevir Tower, the first captain of the Night Lords, shouted, "The false emperor shall be executed. The false emperor deserves to be executed." The attendees shouted in unison, and Zoshar also shouted loudly. At the same moment that Servi Tower shouted, "False Emperor shall be executed," the first ship of the Punishment Fleet, the Stormy approaching, jumped into the real world. The Storm is coming as a Symphony-class warp scout ship built by Dor, equipped with an augur shield and an augur array that surpasses any ship built by the Empire. Alistair Rorschach, commander of the 89th Raven Guard Company, stood on the bridge, gazing at the holographic image. His helmet communicator beeped, and the mechanical voice of his servants could be heard. "Lord Rorschach, the helmsman has steered the ship into the Wendy Channel. Shut down life support and power systems," Alistair ordered. The overhead lights gradually went out, and a light frost formed on the walls in the cogitator. To meet the requirements of this mission, this ship has no ordinary legions or minions, only 3 squads of Astartes and enhanced servants. Following the Council of Nicaea, the former chief librarian was deposed. Balsa Kuturi knew that this was one of the reasons Corvus Corax chose them, who were Terra-born, to carry out this dangerous mission. As the Storm approaches stealthily navigates through darkness towards Planet 5, the 2 crew members leave the bridge and head to the captain's cabin. After setting up the Euclidean rune, they knelt devoutly on the altar and prayed to the Black Emperor. As they recited the mantra for the 3rd time, the black mist surged and engulfed the 2 men. Alistair and Balsa arrived above the black mist and discovered 2 more figures within it. Through the hazy fog, they could not clearly make out the other 2 people. Akurduana, Balsa, Alistair, Zoshar. You must work together on Istvan v. Quote, Nimrod had few men in the 11 legions of the rebels in Istvan v. He could only contact 4. Fortunately, there are people on both the loyal and rebellious sides, which provides room for maneuver and allows for the possibility of achieving great things with limited resources. Iron Warriors, Night Lords, Word Bearers, and Alpha have betrayed the Empire. Akurduana, Balsa, and Alistair were all taken aback. Akurduana suddenly understood why Warmaster had ordered the fleet to leave and instructed her father to build fortifications on the Ugol Heights. He wants to seduce the Loyalists. Balsa and Alistair, your task is to gather the scattered Loyalists and lead them out of Istvan v. Quote, Akurduana and Zoshar, you must actively hunt down the survivors and secretly assist them. Follow your will, the 4 said in unison. They looked at each other and tapped their breastplates in greeting through the black mist. The black mist engulfed them, sending them back to the real world. Greater than 1009. The price you mentioned for achieving perfection refers to Venus. A beam of light descended from the sky and pierced the atmosphere of Istvan V. The blinding light continued to spread, covering the entire Ugol heights. A thunderous explosion tore apart the defensive fortifications surrounding the plateau, roaring as it swallowed everything in its path. The defensive fortifications on the mountain ridge were accompanied by piercing alarms. Amidst the shrill screams, the commander, Lord of Emperor's Children, Akurduana observed crimson runes rising on the tactical interface. The Legion's defenses, built around the alien fortresses, were so perfect that they sheltered Warmaster's army. He looked around, his gaze sweeping past his handsome father before landing on Warmaster in the center of the observation post. Horus Lupercal smiled as he watched the sky darken once more, thousands of drop pods roaring through the atmosphere and crashing into the planet's surface. My friends, remember this day well. The Emperor's loyalists are marching toward their destruction. Angron roared and smashed through its shackles like a wild beast. Fragments of the great door scattered as he charged into the raging flames, disappearing into the thick smoke in an instant. It's time to meet our old friends. Fulgrim's silver hair fluttered. Wearing Mark IV power armor's bizarre warrior, without a helmet, with a chin that grows to an alarming angle and an elongated, dead-looking face, closely follows in Primarch's footsteps. Akurduana silently followed, looking down at the foot of the ridge where thousands of Astartes were fiercely exchanging fire, their barrages washing over each other like a tidal wave. Dozens of runes disappear every second. Amidst the frenzied vortex of battle, a towering giant emerged. Ferrus Manus led the Clan Averni veterans into the trench complex. Venus swung his gleaming fist and slammed Emperor's Children to the ground, their magnificent purple-gold armor shattering with a bang. He raised his arm, and his ornate pistol fired a devastating shot, blasting the Emperor's Children, who were charging with their longswords raised, to pieces. Fulgrim stared at the longsword hanging at Venus's waist. You reforged my sword. His voice echoed as he drew the forgebreaker he had forged for Venus from his waist. Akurduana followed Fulgrim as they charged down the mountain, his gaze sweeping across the entire battlefield. The flames unleashed by the salamanders attacking the northern fortress suppressed the Death Guard's defensive lines, and the foul-smelling giant tongues of fire cleansed each defensive stronghold one by one. Death Guard stood firm in the jagged trenches, retaliating with poisonous smoke and fire. The battle of fire and resilience burned every trench to ashes. The Emperor-class Titan of the Dead Skull Titan, Legion Judgment, striding through the missile storm, unleashed a destructive storm that ignited the suns of satellites along the salamanders' lines. The plasma cannon blasted a crater hundreds of meters in diameter, annihilating hundreds of salamanders. The black dust was melted into shiny black glass, with wisps of ominous black smoke rising from it. Amidst the billowing smoke, the heavy landing craft of the mortal Auxilia descended. An armored company composed of Poison Blade super heavy tanks and Macto heavy tanks roared toward the cliff. The barrage of artillery fire rained down on the black machine, and thunderous explosions echoed through the cliff face. Dust was whipped up by the storm, and a warhound was escorting it. Titan was blasted into burning wreckage amidst fierce fireworks. The ferocious energy released by the Emperor-class Titan ignited and destroyed the Titan killer vehicles, while its own body was scorched into a scorching red ember. It retreated heavily into the shadows of the fortress's main building, awaiting the void shield to recharge. Akurduana moved away from the fighting salamanders and Death Guard, looking towards the other side of the battle line. Within the labyrinth of stone cirques and canyons on the southern slope of the mountain, Sons of Horus constructed a shield-like defensive line, razor wire traps, and fortified positions within a 4-kilometer radius. Raven Guard took flight like a raptor, its Mark I expeditionary power armor's jump pack trailing an electric tail as it crashed into the enemy ranks. First Company CEO Ezekiel Abaddon personally led the gas tower terminators in a relentless and brutal killing spree. Horus Asimandaman walked alongside him, his strikes precise and mechanical. Akurduana's ferocious scream pulled her thoughts back to the front. The large pipes and loudspeakers fixed to the armor amplified the vibration frequency of the killing music, and the deafening sound waves tore a bloody path through the Iron Hands' ranks. First Company Commander Julius Castellan, with a savage sense of pleasure, charged to the front lines. His Terminator's armor was subjected to overwhelming firepower, and the brightly colored armor painted before the battle was charred black. Iron Hands, realize the darkness in your lives. He ripped off the helmet of an Iron Hands soldier, pulled out his head, and tasted the blood and charred flesh. We were once sworn brothers, but now you are dead. He laughed as he tossed his head into the air, his laughter maniacal. The armor of Marius Valusin, the company commander of the Third Company, was decorated with serrated iron spikes, and the skin of the dead, peeled off from the Venetian theater, adorned his blood-stained armor. His body was altered by Malawi, leaving 2 deep cracks in his once existing ears. The eyelids of both eyes were sewn shut, so they would always remain open. Its exaggerated jaw snapped open, and it let out a continuous scream. The terrifying sonic weapon he'd taken from Becca Kingska's band, with its spiked handle and grip, unleashed a wave of discordant notes that sent a squad of Terminators reeling. Gabriel Santo parried the terrifying power greatsword with his power claws and recognized Kasoran's distorted face. He adjusted his direction at lightning speed, blocking every frenzied slash from the sword. He twisted his wrist, his fingertips catching the falling blade of his opponent's sword. The dynamic fields roared and collided, and a violent explosion erupted between the two. Santo groaned as the remaining bits of his flesh, his fist and the molten metal of his gauntlet, stuck together. He walked heavily to Kasoran, who lay on his back with his chest charred and bloody. He stomped on Kasoran, the weight of the cataphractii Terminator armor crushing him. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere, and Kasoran let out a piercing scream, not from pain, but from extreme, exhilarating pleasure. Santo gave him a disgusted look, and Kasoran seized the opportunity to swing his sword upwards. The broken sword flashed, ultimately activating the disruption field. The power sword screeched cruelly as it pierced Santo's body, and Caesar slashed it upwards. Molten fragments of armor flew everywhere, and Kasoran seized the opportunity to get up, sawing his weapon from his pubic bone into his breastplate. Santo's body crashed heavily onto the black sand, and everything around him was reflected in his eyes. Torn by hatred and betrayal, warriors wage a desperate battle against their former brothers. Heroes and traitors shed blood, legions burned in flames, and the Empire's dream collapsed. Fulgrim chuckled softly and spoke to his beloved eldest son beside him. Akerduana, did you see that? Julius and Marius have both become more perfect, and Julius has killed Gabriel. You should also open your mind, and you will achieve even greater glory than him. Just as Akerduana was about to speak, Santo mustered his last strength and plunged the blade into Kasoran's body. Both first captains fell at the same time. Akerduana stared at the attacking lines. Vulcan's massive body pierced through the hail of bullets. He raised his arm, and a heavy flamethrower unleashed a torrent of flames, burning the entire trench's death guard to ashes. Mortarion strode over and swung his scythe, smashing it onto the Saturnine Terminator's thermal derivation field. With a deafening roar, the scythe came to a halt, and the thermal derivation field shattered. The escaping toxic mist seeped into a finger-sized crack in the Saturnine Terminator, dissolving the flesh and blood of the salamanders. The Saturnine Terminator collapsed to his knees with a thud, dying with a muffled groan of suffocation. Mortarion's ruthless and efficient killing spree meant that each sweep of its scythe would claim the life of a Saturnine Terminator. Angron roared as he charged into the center of the battlefield, his chainsaw and double axes unleashing a storm of blood and gore. Opposite Angron's savage slaughter, Korax swooped down like a darkness predator, his winged jump pack leaping through the air, his powerful claws tearing apart World Eaters and Sons of Horus. The massacre took place in a canyon less than 20 kilometers wide, with blood flowing down the slopes of the Ugol Plateau, drawing viscous grooves on the black sand. Is perfection fratricide and slaughter? Akerduana asked. Killing is the necessary price to achieve perfection, Fulgrim said. The pain of killing one's brother brings the ultimate pleasure. Killing his own brother. Akerduana felt a chill run down his spine. The price you mentioned for achieving perfection, is it Phoenix? Fulgrim remained silent, gazing at Phoenix. Phoenix swung his silver fists, shattering bones and tearing armor wherever he struck. The bullets struck his forged armor and bounced off, failing to slow his steps in the slightest. Our allies have arrived, Corvus Corax said. A deafening cheer suddenly erupted as Phoenix looked up at the sky, where the Iron Warrior's heavy transport plane crashed down violently. The aircraft crashed heavily into the high ground, unloading thousands of warriors behind the battle line. As soon as the Iron Warriors poured out of the lines, they began to reinforce the landing zone with armored roadblocks and barbed wire. Word-bearers, Stormbirds screeched and howled, Alpha's Thunderhawks roared past, and Night Lords, landing craft swooped down. They deployed their lines on the flanks, linking them with their own forces, and surrounded Warmaster's army. Victory belongs to us, and we should let our allies win their honor in this battle. We achieved a great victory, but it did not come without a price. My legions have suffered rivers of blood, I cannot imagine the losses you have endured. We have shed rivers of blood, but we will not give up, Phoenix roared. His backpack had already been dumped on the Emperor's children's position behind him, and his pistol had been dropped. The sword at his waist felt as heavy as lead, but he wouldn't draw it until he faced his traitorous brother. Bomber fire from both sides has cut off our supplies, Vulcan's voice came through the communicator. We should retreat temporarily, bandage our wounds, replenish our ammunition from friendly forces, and then rejoin the terrible battle. We must consolidate the gains we have made and get our allies into the fight. Venus looked ahead, and ripples of fear spread along the traitors' lines. They retreated en masse, with Mortarion leading the Death Guard as they retreated into the ruins. The mighty Emperor-class Titans were intimidated by the numerical superiority of the Loyalists, and even Angron retreated with the bloodstained World Eaters. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed. Fulgrim, clad in shimmering purple armor, wields the Warhammer, a long ebony staff inlaid with gold and silver. No, Venus shouted. The traitors have been defeated, all that's needed is one final blow to completely destroy them. We cannot let anyone escape revenge. Venus, Corax warned loudly. We've already won, don't do anything foolish. Iron Hands will not let anyone else settle our feud with the Emperor's children. Venus said, cutting off communication with Vulcan and Corax. Let our brothers rest and lick their wounds. He raised his silver arms high, shouting, Iron Hands, attack. 10-10 they are traitors. I came here for our friendship, Fulgrim said sadly to Akerduana. The old order has been broken and a new dawn is about to break. I offered him the opportunity to become part of the new order, but he refused me. He watched as Venus led the Cataphractii Terminator, advancing relentlessly. Fulgrim leapt down, followed closely by the Phoenix Guard with a terrifying war cry. The Phoenix Guard clashed with the Clan Averni veterans, their halberds and power claws collided. The burst of light splashed out, and the disruption fields pulled at each other. At the eye of the storm of light and sound, two close Primarch brothers walked toward each other. Venus drew his flaming longsword from his waist, and Fulgrim smiled. We fought to the death with the weapons we had forged for each other in the past, and this is the perfect ending to our great friendship. Ever since you came to me with betrayal, I have dreamed of settling scores, Venus said. Only one of us can get out of here, you know that. Of course I know. Fulgrim shook his head. You ultimately chose the wrong path, you betrayed our friendship. You are the one who betrayed us, Venus retorted. You betrayed the Emperor, and you betrayed me. Horus is a lunatic. Look around at the death. How could this be right? I am my father's loyal son, and his will and vengeance will be fulfilled through me. The Emperor is a useless man, Fulgrim said contemptuously. His empire was engulfed in war, yet he hid underground in Terra, preoccupied with trivial matters. He cannot rule the galaxy. Don't even think about getting my support, Venus said coldly. You don't have a second chance, Fulgrim said dismissively. Open your eyes and look, it's all over. Venus's laughter was tinged with sadness. The 4 newly joined legions will crush your rebellious attempts. Fulgrim could no longer suppress the turmoil in his mind, and he looked at Venus with great interest. How naive you are. You really think Horus would be completely unprepared? Look back at your landing site, and you will find that you are the ones who have been defeated. Venus turned around in astonishment and saw Raven Guard and Salamanders dragging the wounded and the dead, retreating in an orderly fashion to the landing area. Vulcan, unable to receive audio communication, shouted loudly. We need medical assistance and ammunition supplies. They are traitors. Balsa Cuturi's warning suddenly rang out on the Raven Guard communication channel, and quickly spread to the Salamanders and Iron Hands communication channels. As chief librarian, he decided to use his premonition as his answer when his father asked him questions later. The Raven Guards and Salamanders hesitated and stopped 3 kilometers from the armored roadblock, as a flurry of questions filled the communication channels. A flare shot from Horus's lair into the sky, illuminating the entire battlefield. The barrage of betrayal spewed from the gun barrels, and dozens of people fell into pools of blood. For your lives, for revenge against the traitors, escape as fast as you can. Balsa shouted a warning. He and Alistair Rorschach had already turned sharply and run into the shadows of the high canyon. The 3 squads of the 89th Company followed closely in the footsteps of their company commander. One by one, the Raven Guards recovered from their shock and instinctively retreated. Suddenly, phrases and idioms dating back to the Deliverance Uprising appeared on the command channel, and the father's orders roused the other Raven Guards as well. High on the mountain, Venus watched as missiles whistled through the air and crashed into the scattered, retreating Loyalist lines. A barrage of betrayal messages mercilessly tore apart the loyal warrior's body. He turned around, his gaze passing over Fulgrim's smiling eyes, and saw Warmaster's regrouped forces. He then turned and charged towards them. Fulgrim stared at the silver coin, his eyes dimming for the first time, and his body trembled slightly. Great victories are fleeting, but they are certainly the ultimate enjoyment. He almost wanted to switch places with his best friend and experience the feeling for himself. He licked his lips. All that awaits you is a miserable defeat and death. Horus has ordered me to take your life, but I remember our great friendship from the past. If you lay down your weapons now, I will plead with him to spare your life. This is another chance I'm giving you, your last chance. Phoenix, you must surrender. Traitor, only the loss of honor frightens me. Phoenix roared. Warriors' loyalty to the Emperor will not be surrendered to you, not now, and never again. You must kill every single one of us. Akurduana, I gave him a chance, Fulgrim said to his beloved eldest son behind him, as if speaking to himself as well. He swung the Forgebreaker, and Phoenix raised his burning blade. A weapon forged in brotherhood, wielded in hatred. The intense energy collision illuminated the battlefield, which stretched for several kilometers. The longsword tore through the ornate armor, and Warhammer smashed scorch marks into the black armor. Akurduana looked around, his halberd tearing apart cataphracti terminators, his power claws ripping apart their shimmering purple armor. The Phoenix Guard and Clan Averny are rapidly heading towards their deaths. Open black lens bracket. This is definitely not the battle I wanted. Close black lens bracket. He stood silently on the battlefield, like a bystander. Phoenix's blade sliced through his father's shoulder armor, then plunged into his defenses, the tip of the sword aimed at his lower abdomen. Fulgrim swung the handle of the Forgebreaker's hammer, sweeping the burning blade aside, and the hammerhead roared as it slammed into Phoenix's head. The silver liquid spread rapidly, blocking the hammer blow. Phoenix knelt on one knee, his sword piercing Fulgrim's armor and tearing his flesh apart. Clang! The Forgebreaker crashed to the ground. Fulgrim stepped back and knelt down on the ground. They stared at each other in their dizziness, the pain throbbing within them, tearing a hole in their consciousness. Fulgrim watched as Phoenix stood up and raised his flaming blade. My brother, he murmured, his hand instinctively reaching for his waist to draw the silver blade of the Temple of Ra. The silver sword bit into the flaming longsword, hissing as it did so. The silver hand burned fiercely, pressing down little by little as it moved closer to Fulgrim's face. No! Fulgrim roared in defiance. I am perfect, I will not fail. The amethyst on the sword hilt gleamed with an evil light, and a malevolent, dazzling light enveloped Phoenix's face. As the musky smoke billowed and surged, Fulgrim felt a powerful presence taking shape around him, its strength more intoxicating than any energy he could imagine. A devilish power flowed through his limbs, his arms brimming with strength. With a wild roar, Fulgrim suddenly stood up and shoved Phoenix backward. He turned his sword, the silver blade slicing through the black armor as if tearing through thin paper, and biting into Phoenix's chest. Phoenix fell to his knees, the flaming blade slipping from his hand. Kill him! The screams echoed simultaneously in countless dimensions of space and time, reverberating within his head. The voice carried a harsh, commanding force, and his limbs seemed to have lost control. Purple flames surrounded Fulgrim, licking the wound on his chest. The crackling arcs of electricity felt like Chemos's intimate lovers caressing him, dissolving his will to resist. He failed. His perfection was a facade. He must be punished. He must die. Otherwise, he'll kill you. Your perfect journey is about to come to an end. Fulgrim stared at the shimmering reflection of Phoenix's silver coin and suddenly realized the extent of his depravity. His arm convulsed as he struggled to loosen his grip on the silver blade. But the thread wrapped around the sword hilt coiled tightly around his hand like a venomous snake, and it seemed to come alive, moving as if it had come to life. As the silver sword tore through the air and whistled down, Fulgrim sensed the triumphant cries of an ancient being. He had been lurking inside this sword all along. As Fulgrim was gripped by terror, the warp-forged blade struck the silver metal of the real world, accompanied by an echoing, supernatural shriek, as it pierced Phoenix's neck, breaking through his muscles and penetrating his bone. Blood stained Fulgrim's eyes, and as if bitten, he abruptly dropped the blade of Ra. He took a trembling breath and looked at his hands. Throne, what have I done? You did what you had to do, and you've become more perfect. The voice hissed. Fulgrim's neck felt warm, as if someone was licking it. He twisted his neck and saw Akurduana. He's dead. You killed him, Akurduana said to him. Fulgrim wept uncontrollably as he saw, through his blurred vision, the horrific changes that had taken place in his offspring, and the perverse sense of their pleasure. I can end your guilt and pain. I will help you forget him, and you will find eternal sweetness. The obstacle in Fulgrim's heart disappeared, and he felt the ecstasy of beings older than time flooding into his soul. You killed your brother. Akurduana's words fell like a razor blade. I must make my son understand victory, even if it brings me so much pain, Fulgrim's consciousness roared. He must understand that I am the perfect one. No. A roar came from a corner of darkness. Greater than. 1011 The birth of the Sapphire King. The moment Ferrus Manus's head fell, his death reverberated within the warp. He led his sons and allied forces into Horus Lupercal's trap. His frustration stirred up a tidal wave in the ocean of souls, and his shame blasted a deep chasm in the Imperium. A raging inferno of fury scorched the seas and boiled the heavens, while endless regret froze thousands of predators. The surging emotions collided, creating a deafening roar. The disappointment of unfulfilled ambitions echoed in warp, mixed with the resentment of defeat, which shaped the form of devil. A body adorned with jewels slowly took shape. Sapphire King was born. On the surface of Istvan V, all the Iron Hands who witnessed Jean Father being killed by Fulgrim went mad, consumed by endless hatred. The unique scent of pheromones filled the air, and a supple body extended its enormous claws, reaching for the other side of the mirror. Phoenix's death sowed the seeds of madness, tearing an unhealable wound in Iron Hands' heart. From the moment of his birth, Sapphire King noticed that beneath the rational suppression of the emotions of Iron Hands, offspring lay the regret of not having protected Primarch. He greedily drew power from endless despair and the hatred that condensed from sorrow. What a delightful and delicious treat. He scanned each Iron Hands greedily, including those not in Istvan V and those with whom he had only a weak connection. Sapphire King's claws flickered, branding countless scars onto the souls of Iron Hands, extending from the level they could feel to the inexpressible dimension of emotion. He disguised his vicious curse as a way to help the Iron Hands avoid the path of hating vulnerability. Flesh and blood are weak and feeble, while machinery soars to new heights. Only in this way can we avoid repeating the mistakes that led to Primarch's demise. From the moment Primarch died and the Sapphire was born, Iron Hands, and the power of his warp stirred up waves in the warp, quietly plucking the strings of destiny. The impact extends from the Empire to the enemies of the Iron Hands, forcing the Iron Hands to gradually strip away their humanity. Sapphire King raises the ceremonial blade and looks toward the future. We have plenty of time to play around, and this will continue for centuries and millennia to come, he said in a playful tone, as if he were watching a grand drama. The great moment will come when your emotions fade away. Istvan V, the Iron Hands, dropped their weapons, which were out of ammunition, drew their battle knives, and launched a desperate attack on the traitors around them. Cadmus Tyro, the Iron Company commander of the 65th Clan Company and a close attendant of the Honor Guard, raised his shield and charged to the front. A barrage of bullets pounded against his shield. He leaned forward, his weight pressing down on the shield, sending an emperor's children flying. The sword whistled through the air, aiming straight for his throat. Cadmus turned a third of his body, causing the shield to spin. Bang! The blade was struck in the middle by the force field and flew out of his hand. Cadmus plunged his fighting knife into the traitor's neck, and the blade snapped in two during the struggle. Blood soaked his gauntlets as he slammed the corpse against the traitor, then leapt up and slammed his elbow into the head of another traitor. Bang! Cadmus felt a numbness in his elbow and lost consciousness. He didn't realize he had killed his enemy until the splattered blood came into view. He crashed into the blood-soaked black sand and only recovered a second later. Open black lens bracket. My fragile body limits my revenge. Close black lens bracket. Cadmus thought. He stepped forward again and charged toward the traitor alongside Brandon. At the same moment that Iron Hands launches a merciless revenge against the traitors, the salamanders throw themselves headlong into the fiery furnace of war. Before Vulcan's return, 18th Legion leader Cassian Von strode heavily as his Volkite Serpenta released its final energy. The scorching flames crashed down on the Predator tank, accompanied by towering black flames, and the thermal derivation field was extinguished with a whoosh. The light shining on his left arm suddenly went out, but Cassian did not stop. He raised his arm and swung his massive fist, slamming it into an Alpha's chest. The Nemesis-type bolter pressed against the Saturnine Terminator, unleashing a barrage of roaring projectiles that pounded against the armor. Cassian's body trembled violently from the blows. He swung his right arm and used the Volkite Serpenta as a melee weapon, slamming it onto Bolter. Bang! The launch slot was smashed, and the bomb exploded, blasting Alpha away. Cassian's dark green armor was charred black, and he staggered forward like a giant beast emerging from the ashes. Lorgar Aurelian stopped in his tracks, his magnificent hammer dripping with Raven Guard's blood. What's wrong? Cor Farron walked to his side, his power claws crackling and exploding, charring the flesh wrapped around him. Their lines have collapsed. Not all of them. Lorgar shook his head. The Raven Guard's strategy of feigned retreat and rapid maneuvering is well suited to the current situation, their withdrawal is swift and efficient. Corax wasn't running away, he was drawing the fiercest firepower to help his offspring escape. He killed many of us. Corvus Corax's eyes burned with the flames of hatred as he swept his wings across the ground. Glug glug. Two heads rolled into the black sand. The jetpack spewed out a burst of flames, burning the incoming word-bearers to ashes. Corax met the diving word-bearer's gunboat head-on, lightning crackling and exploding. With a soft hum, the gunboat, stained with black flames, spiraled and descended. Boom! The explosion attracted hundreds of word-bearers, who rained down fire on Corax. His black armor made him difficult to discern, and the deadly beams aimed at Primarch were all deflected, failing to hit their target. Corax's armor was branded with scorch marks, but none of them penetrated the armor. Erebus knocked a Raven Guard sergeant to the ground and smashed his head in with a backhand. Everything you did in this killing field was destined. You can't face your brothers yet, it's fate. We must all follow the will of the gods and play our destined roles. Killing those Raven Guards is what you should be doing now, Corfarin said. No. Lorgar stared intently at the word-bearers, their bodies blackened by Corax's gleaming power claws as he slaughtered them. You have spent decades building a devout army, a legion willing to give their lives for your great cause, Erebus said. You have finally achieved your dream goal. Do not stray from the right path at crucial moments. We have found gods worthy of worship, but we will not be enslaved by them. Lorgar started running. My life belongs to myself. He will kill you. Corfarin gave chase, but Lorgar left him far behind. No, Lorgar. His anger and panic were mixed with fear and sorrow. My death is also my own, Lorgar said softly. He watched the death storm sweep across the shadows. He had barely spoken to Corax and knew little about him except for a brief encounter with the Akum-Sutu's cluster. He had no chance to use the enlightening truth to persuade Corax to abandon his darkness and embrace the light. Lorgar's inner power was boiling, his anger surging, eager to be unleashed. His talent was no match for Magnus or Nimrod, and he could not use psionic energy regularly. That force is unreliable, unlike faith which is stable. He has always kept his psychic talents hidden with unwavering determination. Now, the suppressed power, accompanied by a scream from the depths of the soul, has broken free of its restraints. The roar of the Sea of Souls swept through the canyon, and Lorgar's burning rage materialized. The unrestrained power radiated outwards, covering not only his body but also spreading to his offspring throughout the entire battlefield. Greater than 10-12 Conrad Kurz, you are the most disgusting weakling I have ever seen in my life. Lorgar Aurelian's shoulders emanated illusory wings formed from psionic flames and radiant light, while the surface of his armor glowed brilliantly. Corvus Corax, traitor! Corax screamed in response, leaping forward as his backpack spewed flames and lunged at Lorgar. Corax dodged the priest's staff and activated his jetpack to fly over the powerfully swinging hammerhead. Lorgar gripped the Warhammer, the light of enlightenment forged for him by Vulcan, tightly in both arms, and swung it upwards with great force, producing a loud ringing sound like church bells. The hammerhead's energy field emitted a dazzling golden light, knocking down the surrounding towers. Corax lost his balance and fell to the ground. This golden light of psionic energy is nothing but a crude reflection of our Father. He immediately lunged forward, his claws gripping the handle of the enlightenment tightly, sparks crackling and burning Lorgar's hands. Lorgar's boots crunched through the black dust. I am revealing the truth to humanity. You destroyed the Empire, you betrayed your own blood. Corax's pale skin blazed with fury. Lorgar, I will kill you. Lorgar had never seen Corax so wild. Even when Horus suppressed him in Akum-Sotheth, causing heavy casualties among his offspring and leading to their falling out, he was as cold and ruthless as a knife, but he had never shown such ferocity. The claws closed in on Lorgar, the deadly tip just a finger's breadth away. A burst of lightning sliced through Lorgar's cheek, scorching his golden skin. The pain surged, and a burst of dazzling light erupted from the psionic flames. Corax instinctively closed his eyes. Lorgar seized the opportunity to raise the light of enlightenment and crash it into Corax, but the Lord of the Ravens leapt up on a cloud of black smoke and then swooped down. Lorgar swung his staff to deflect Corax's right claw, but Corax's left claw had already torn open his abdomen and pierced his torso. The blade's tip emerged from the spine, its energy field sawing through Lorgar's body, gnawing at his internal organs. As the light of dawn fell, Lorgar reached out and grabbed Corax by the throat. Corax paid no heed to his weak brother's hands, his claws twisting and hooking into the bones. For the Emperor. He suddenly pulled out his claws, the blood hissing as it was dried by the force field. Lorgar knelt on the ground, blood gushing from his abdomen. The psionic storm dissipated, the flames vanished, and Lorgar, whose appearance resembled his father's, spoke with his head held high. Father, lies. Corax's dark eyes remained unmoved as his sharp claws slashed down mercilessly. Bang! Dark eyes clashed, pale faces reflected each other, and sharp claws tore at each other. Corax. Conrad Kurz's face remained expressionless, as if frozen in place. Conrad Kurz. Corax uttered the name like a curse, as if whispering to another version of himself reflected in the mirror. Why did you do this? He tried to draw his weapon, but Conrad Kurz's claws held him firmly. Little crow, don't fly away in a hurry. He lowered his eyes. Stand up, you coward. Conrad Kurz looked at Lorger with disgust as he helped himself up in his midnight blue-black armor, and said disdainfully. You are the most disgusting weakling I have ever seen in my life. Taking advantage of the situation, Korax activated the backup fuel in his flight backpack, struggled to break free of his restraints, and fled at high speed. At the same moment Conrad Kurz was laughing maniacally as he chased after Korax. In the Valley of Embers, Raven Guard was fleeing at top speed, treading on the black sand. A column of black smoke rose into the sky from the Ugol heights behind them, and on the other side of the canyon, a group of Night Lords sped up and lay prone among the rocks. The dark blue armor gleamed with an eerie light, and sharp eyes awaited the appearance of their prey. A figure suddenly emerged from the shadows among the rocks. Rose Bishop, Alistair Rorschach melted like a candle, turning into viscous flesh and blood that quickly seeped into the power armor. Night Lord seemed to sense something and turned his head sharply, only to see a cold wind blowing in his face. He shook his head slightly, thinking it was because he was about to drink a mouthful of blood and was being overly sensitive. Night Lords took a restless step to the side, his left arm bumping into another set of blue-black power armor. Night Lords turned his head in confusion, only to see his swollen left arm suddenly explode. Clumps of flesh and blood transformed into a storm, suddenly sweeping across the surroundings. Mark IV power armor blasted a hole in him, and flesh and blood burrowed into his body like living things. Bang! Another explosion rang out, and Night Lord's body burst apart, splattering thick, sticky flesh and blood that rapidly spread in all directions. The stream of blood and flesh spread to the feet of the Night Lords, submerging their boots. Boom boom boom. A barrage of explosives riddled Night Lords, who had lost his left arm. Boom. The flesh bomb exploded with a deafening roar, and amidst the rain of blood, flesh and blood suddenly burst forth from the edges of the rocks, climbing up Night Lord's body. Night Lords suddenly turned their heads, but the stream of blood and flesh spread all the way and entered the breathing grid. Whoosh! The stream of flesh and blood entered Night Lord's mouth, the slightly warm, slippery sensation sliding down his esophagus and into his stomach. Night Lords tried to turn their claws around and grab the body to pull out the foreign object that had intruded into it. But his arms were heavy and stiff, unable to move an inch. Bang! He moved forward involuntarily, as if he were a puppet on a string, toward the nearby Night Lords. He opened his mouth, wanting to make a sound to remind him. Wah! The sound was stuck in his throat, not penetrating the breathing grill at all. He felt his flesh melting, flowing slowly through his body, accumulating in his arms, chest, and head, condensing into 4 flesh and blood bombs. Night Lords' consciousness was plunged into darkness, and at the same time, their bodies exploded. 4 bombs claimed the lives of 6 Night Lords, and sticky flesh and blood covered the ground. The Night Lords were alarmed and turned their guns on the stream of blood on the ground. The bomb roared, exploding into a cloud of blood mist. Raptor Master's flying jump pack spewed flames as he soared into the air, overlooking the waterfall below. Figures flashed through the flesh and blood, and then clumps of flesh and blood exploded with a deafening roar. Although the Night Lords were numerous, they could not discern where the enemy was hiding, only feeling that the enemy was lurking in every piece of flesh and every shadow. He opened the communication channel. I have encountered the enemy. The exact number of enemies cannot be determined, but it exceeds 10 librarians. Ask. Before Master Raptor could finish speaking, a streak of blood struck door. He extended his sharp claws, reaching for the figure that was faintly visible among them. The screeching claws gripped a carpet of flesh and blood, and the splitting force field hissed as it tore off wisps of blood mist. The fleshy blanket was layered upon layered, exceptionally tough, and the sharp claws sank into the mud. The blanket swung around with a whoosh, and Rose Bishop, Alistair emerged from the cloak of flesh and blood, slashing with her claws. With a short, explosive sound, the Raptor Master's head exploded. Nikon Sarakin stepped out of the shadows with his shadow steps, gazing at Alistair standing amidst the blood and gore of corpses. Are crows really that powerful? He gazed at the hellish ground. Open black lens bracket. Could this be the reason Father hated Terra Born? Close black lens bracket. As Sharo Vajra was about to speak, heavy footsteps sounded behind him, and he turned to look. Not long ago, he loudly reminded the former chief librarian who had betrayed him. Balsa Kuturi strode over. Balsa nodded to Sharokin, then opened a private communication channel and spoke to Alistair in Vostonian. We have broken through the traitors' blockade. You should take them and evacuate immediately. Aren't you coming with me? Alistair asked, puzzled. I'm going to help my father and the other Raven guards, Balsa said. My lord has not ordered me to leave. Greater than 1013. You're already dead before I even made a move. Cassian Vaughn, the former commander of the 18th Legion, walked unsteadily at the head of the procession. The Saturnine Terminator armor was charred black by the explosive shell, and the massive elemental material burned its thick chest to a bright red. His eyepieces flashed with runes, like the screen of a thinker with an unstable signal. The Honor Guard members and other salamander remnants who had gathered along the way dragged their broken bodies behind Cassian. They trudged through black dust, their feet surrounded by the tattered blue-black armor and broken weapons of the Night Lords slaughtered by Cassian. The explosions roared, and the flying Mars debris caught the eyes of the salamanders. The salamanders all looked at Cassian, who stood tall, like a green behemoth carrying a heavy burden through flames. He continued forward with heavy steps, swinging his arms wildly. The Night Lords that collided with the mountain were thrown out like kites with broken strings, crashing against the mountainside. Tau Thor, a member of the Nightbat Council, stepped forward, his dark eyes fixed on Cassian. Thor's one-handed bionic hand clicked, and his claws flashed with light, which, reflected on his pale face, made him look even more terrifying. Boom! Cassian's claws pierced the ashes-covered armor, and he staggered from the impact. He raised his left arm and, taking advantage of the claws getting stuck in the Saturnine Terminator armor, slammed it down on the enemy. Thor raised his other arm and reached for his bionic hand. With a cracking sound, the claws crushed the bionic hand, and then closed in. Sizzle. With a piercing sound, the Saturnine Terminator was ripped open. Boom! Cassian crashed to the ground, and he crashed into the hearts of the salamanders. They watched as blood stained the black sand, and roared as they charged toward Thor. The hunters swooped in like vultures, their talons hissing as they plunged into the green armor, hoisting the corpses of the salamanders high into the air. You are a good prey, a good opponent to hone your warrior skills. Thor raised his claws and slashed down with a hint of regret in his voice. The drifting black dust made Thor's movements appear increasingly slow and gentle. The noisy battlefield fell silent, the killing intent in his dark eyes faded, and even the beating of their two hearts slowed down. Cassian's mouth was bleeding. Traitor! He slammed his fist into the traitor's chest, yelling, "Die!" Thor didn't react at all, and flew away like a kite with a broken string. A line of blood appeared in his dark eyes. His eyes blinked, and his heart began to pump powerfully. Thor snapped out of his daze from the eerie silence and landed on his feet. He gripped the skinning knife tightly, his sharp eyes scanning the surroundings, searching for any lurking librarians. Thor's eyes moved slower and slower, and the flow of adrenaline in his body slowed down. His eyelids began to grow heavy, and just as they were about to close, his eyes suddenly twitched as he caught sight of a figure standing behind the rocks. Zo-Sahar. That damned Terra-born, he betrayed the Legion and his father. Just as Thor was about to leap up and pounce on the traitor, his eyelids completely closed, and darkness swallowed his consciousness. This was taken from Marisoth's ship, Zo-Sahar said, as three blurry images of himself were played in the Nightbat Council. A warrior clad in midnight blue armor appeared behind the two servants, his skinning knife gleaming with a chilling light. He waved his right hand, and a jet of blood spurted out. The servants behind them fell, and the companions in front turned around and then fled in terror. Night Lords let out a cruel laugh as he strolled after them, cornering the servants. The skinning knife swung, splattering blood all over the wall. As the images faded, Zo-Sahar continued, "We couldn't find any identifying biometrics at the scene that could prove the killer's identity." Thor shrugged and said nonchalantly with his one hand, "Some warriors have a tradition of hunting in lower-tier areas, and honing their skills by hunting live prey is a hallmark of warriors. According to tradition, Legion warriors can only hunt down gang members who dare to threaten their servants during their shifts. They can only hunt when punishing evil," Primarch's attendant said worriedly. "This is a depraved and evil act. It was the Terras who did it," Thor asserted, his gaze sharp as he stared at Zo-Sahar. "They don't understand the nuances of the Nostromo gang. Those servants are not my enemies. The Legion's recruits have fallen." Zo-Sahar often haunted the dreams of others, and he knew the extent of the Legion's corruption. "I have seen more and know more than you have. Terra, why don't you challenge my axe?" Thor said disdainfully, activating the disruption field on his claws. "I'm here," Zo-Sahar said coldly. "Your death is near." Thor watched Zo-Sahar emerge from the darkness. "I didn't expect you to be a hidden psyker." A cruel smile curled at the corner of his lips. "You think you have a chance just because I'm slightly injured? Weak Terra people, it's time to show you what true Night Lords are. You can't defeat me in my heart, and you can't defeat me in reality either." Thor hissed with his claws and charged toward Zo-Sahar. As the distance between the two gradually closed, Thor was astonished to find that the Terran made no move. Open black lens bracket within the mind constructed by psychic dreams, "I cannot harm him," close black lens bracket. He pondered, but did not stop. No matter what tricks the cowardly Terrans tried, he could crush them. Thor was 3 steps away from Zoshar when he suddenly collapsed to the ground. "You're already dead before I even make a move," Zoshar, the Soul Assurer, said calmly. At the same moment, Cassian swung his massive fist and smashed it down on Thor's head. Blood splattered on the blurry helmet screen, where red runes flickered like snowflakes. Cassian paused, the swift and decisive traitor showing no reaction whatsoever, allowing him to fight with all his might, despite the attack being much slower than usual. As he stood there stunned, the communication channel suddenly crackled with the standard Terra voice. "Hi Gothic. I am Balsa Kucheri, Raven Guard, formerly Chief Librarian. 1. All loyal warriors, proceed immediately to the nearest evacuation point. Balsa Kucheri." Cassian recalled the man who had warned the traitors not long before they launched their deadly betrayal. On his tactical interface, several black raven runes, symbolizing hope, flashed by. Cassian did not hesitate. He believed that the path guided by Warrior, the loyalist who had warned them before they stepped into the ambush, was their only hope now. "Retreat, proceed to the evacuation point." His adjutant rushed to the front of the group and quickly withdrew according to the route planned on the tactical interface. Salamanders dragged his battered body toward the evacuation point. Soul Assurer, Zoshar wanders through the darkness, he does not appear in person. The Night Lords and Salamanders were fundamentally at odds, and in Haratan, the father clashed with the Vulcan. He knew he wouldn't win Salamanders' trust, but he didn't need to. His responsibilities differ from those of Akerduana, Balsa, and Alistair. Each of them is responsible for a portion of the complete Black Emperor Oracle. His task is to assist any loyalists he encounters in their escape, and Alistair will lead them to the Black Emperor. Soul Assurer, Zoshar wandered through the darkness, watching Cassian, who was always fighting on the front lines, constantly swinging his arms to kill one traitor after another. He grabbed the weapon he had seized from the enemy and swung it with all his might, knocking down one enemy after another. The traitors' firepower was mostly focused on him. Countless bullets should have taken Saturnine Terminator's life long ago, but he stood firm like an unyielding warrior emerging from lava. Zoshar admired him greatly, and repeatedly pulled Night Lords into his dream whenever Cassian faced death threats, causing him to be crushed by a tremendous force while in a daze. Greater than 1014 Akerduana surrenders to the perfect you. Fulgrim's gaze lingered briefly on the blazing sword, his eyes flashing with alternating purple phantoms and gray sorrow. A moment later, he looked away and picked up the Forgebreaker. Fulgrim, with the blade of Lure and Forgebreaker slung over his waist, approached Akerduana. "My son, it is time to make a decision." Akerduana heard a strange hissing sound mixed in with her father's words, as if a venomous snake was slithering in her throat and spitting out the sound. He recalled the Black Emperor's admonition and divine mission. "I see. I will hunt down Iron Hands." As Akerduana spoke, he walked to the headless body of Ferrus Manus, picked up the flaming sword along with the silver hand that was gripping it, and walked away. Fulgrim stared intently at Akerduana and the flaming sword in his hand, two voices swirling and clashing in his mind like snakes. "The fiery sword was forged for me by Phoenix, and it is also my trophy. You no longer need it. You are completely different from the past. You should no longer dwell on the past. Forget Phoenix. Take a look at your beloved son." Eyes glowing with purple light gazed at Akerduana's retreating figure. "You tried everything you could, but he remained unmoved. Now Akerduana submits to the perfect you, and trillions of people will follow in your footsteps. You should have accepted chaos long ago." Fulgrim's sorrowful tears drifted away on the wind, and he let out a joyful whisper. "No, I'm not perfect yet, you know, I'm still one step away from perfection." Akerduana followed the remnants of Iron Hands into the valley and then stopped. He said to Palatine Blades Lavas Cario beside him, "Take them back to the ship and put them in my armory." Akerduana knew he absolutely could not bring Phoenix's flaming sword, much less his signature silver hand, to meet Iron Hands. Once the Iron Hands see Phoenix's relics, they will immediately attack him without giving him any chance to explain. He decided to hold a sacrifice after the war ended and offer them to the Black Emperor. "Yes, sir," Lavas replied respectfully. He knew that the peerless swordsman had a habit of collecting weapons. He had collected nearly 400 weapons before the Zidane War, and now he had more than 1,000. After Lavas left, Solomon Demeter, the company commander of the Second Company, came before Lord Commander. "What should we do next?" "Of course, it's in accordance with my father's orders to hunt down Iron Hands." Solomon was prepared, he said with a smile. "I have a plan. The Second Company will head to the Valley Mark 295. Akerduana nodded. "I trust your plans. Where is my battlefield?" 360, transmitted to your tactical network. Ulrich Brandon, the Steel Company commander of the 65th Company of the Iron Hands, leads his company in pursuit of the fleeing Emperor's children, all the way to Fish-shaped Valley. It is narrow at both ends and wide in the middle. Bra stopped abruptly, staring at the fish-mouth-shaped exit ahead. Cadmus Taro, the attendant, raised his shield and stood in front of Blah, blocking a barrage of bullets. Company commander. This place is perfect for those noisy, wicked warriors. As soon as he finished speaking, Emperor's children, clad in purple armor, suddenly appeared on the right side of the mountain wall, raising a strange musical instrument and pointing it at the valley. Marius Varusin, the company commander of the third company of Emperor's children, had his chin pulled to an incredible angle as Beckett Kinska sang, with a specially made megaphone perfectly embedded in his mouth. Iron hands, die with your father. His voice was louder than the sound of a logging gun firing, echoing through the valley. The iron hands instantly activated the filtering function of Lemon's ear, but the supernatural howl pierced straight into their skulls. Bang! Bang! With a short, explosive bang, the heads of the two iron hands snapped off amidst the echoing, ear-piercing shockwave. One by one, Emperor's children emerged from the hilltops on both sides, raising their noise weapons and aiming them into the valley. A deafening harmonic boom echoed into the canyon, the terrifying sonic boom killing more than a dozen Mark IVs. Power armor exploded, splattering flesh and blood everywhere. Dreadnought swung his arm, aimed at the traitor above the canyon, and unleashed a barrage of revenge bullets. Boom boom boom. The barrage of bullets detonated one bizarrely shaped musical instrument after another, the echoing harmonics striking the traitors and blasting them into a cloud of blood mist. Varusin raised the sonic boom cannon hanging from his arm. The long, narrow filling device originated from the Kinska Orchestra and had been continuously improved by craftsmen. He undulated along the long axis of the orchestral instrument, his body vibrating as if a chainsword motor were starting up, causing it to fight incessantly. A burst of sonic energy, like fireworks, shot out and struck the body of an Iron Hands dreadnought in a devastating explosion. The grotesque howl roared and blasted the auditory receiver into a ball of fire. An explosive climax erupted out of nowhere, and amidst a deafening sonic boom, Dreadnought crashed to the ground. When Bra saw the ancient Dreadnought monk destroyed by the eerie noise of the Emperor's children, he knew that even if he fought to the death, he could not kill the traitor. He suppressed the hatred in his heart and coldly gave the order, retreat. Cadmus led the way, with Bra close behind, rushing toward the exit. Each continuous, piercing sonic boom behind them claimed the lives of one or more warriors of the 65th Company. Open black lens bracket. Their flesh and blood are too fragile, and mine are too fragile. Close black lens bracket. Blah clenched his fists. As he pondered, Cadmus stepped to the left, his body completely blocking Bra's path. The chords roared with ecstatic joy, crashing against the storm shield. Supernatural harmonics collided with the energy field, creating a continuous roar. The storm shield's light suddenly went out, and shattered fragments fell to the ground with a thud. Cadmus took a half-step back, dropped the hilt he was holding, and drew his combat sword. Although he blocked the attack, he also lost his storm shield. Bolter had already run out of ammunition and was discarded by him. He now only has a combat knife left. While blocking the canyon are more than a dozen Emperor's children whose human forms are indistinguishable. Cadmus roared and charged forward, determined to drag the traitor down with him even in death. A noisy warrior's lungs pounded, a frenzied outburst of excitement, pain, and ecstatic climax crashing onto the cataphract Terminator armor. Boom! Cadmus's armor was charred black from the explosion, blood was flowing from his ears, and his face was swollen and distorted from the blast. He swayed, but did not fall. He dragged his heavy steps toward the exit. Boom! Cadmus lost his hearing, and the howling sound echoing in his mind tormented him with a splitting headache, like a drill. His vision blurred, but he stared intently at the fish-shaped exit, a flash of purple gold suddenly appearing in his eyes. Greater than 10:15. The first noise, the death of warrior. Ulrich Brandon, the Steel Company commander of the 65th Company of Iron Hands, looked toward the mouth of the fish-shaped valley, where a group of Emperor's children suddenly appeared. They brandished their dueling blades and charged swiftly toward the noise of warrior. With their extensive dueling experience, they had already devised a strategy when they received the order to become the Palatine Blades champion. The dual blade pierced the noise warrior's breastplate, penetrating the terracotta and bundles of muscle fibers. The sharp blade tore through flesh and blood, severed the sternum, and plunged into the beating heart. They braced their forearms against their powered armor, using their full weight to propel themselves forward. They became entangled and crashed forward. The noise warriors were subjected to the impact of the weight of both sides, and the air in their lungs was squeezed out. As blood splattered, the Palatine blades spun their blades, shredding the other heart. They pushed the corpses into the rear ranks, and as the sound waves shattered the bodies, they drew their swords and launched an attack. "Why are the traitors fighting amongst themselves?" asked Cadmus Taro, the attendant, puzzled. "They have long lost their honor," Ulrich said. "They will fight amongst themselves over anything. But we must also be wary, this could be a conspiracy." Marius Valusin, the company commander of the 3rd Company of Emperor's Children, overlooked the battlefield as he walked to the edge of the cliff. "Akerduana, you have betrayed your father and failed to live up to his trust in you," he roared, his face suddenly contorting into a smile. "Traitor, I'm going to kill you." Before drawing strength from Beka Kinska's songs, he never imagined he could rival Akerduana. But he has now undergone a qualitative change, and the fact that he easily destroyed a powerful dreadnought is the best proof of this change. Jealousy gnawed at Valusin's heart, he longed to replace Akerduana and become his father's favorite son. Varusin aimed his instrument at Akerduana and unleashed a series of exciting, high-pitched notes. Akerduana's spine emitted a dazzling golden light, ascending into the 2nd level of Thalima's state of mind. The symphony of curses surged wildly, tearing at the golden light. Akerduana did not slow down at all, he lunged forward and sped upwards. He gazed at Varusin's distorted face, the nobility of the Emperor's children had vanished, leaving only a deformed ugliness. He still wore the Palatine Aquila on his breastplate, but it had been deliberately defiled and engraved with ritual marks, turning it into a mark of blasphemy. What's even more disgusting is that the trophies hanging on the armor are limbs stuck to the armor, with thin layers of human skin attached to them. The proud Emperor's children have fallen. Akerduana's eyes blazed with fury as he followed the Black Emperor's teachings, using reason as a rein to control his anger. Adrenaline surged through the body, and the heart pumped powerfully. His speed increased suddenly, leaving a blurry afterimage in Valusin's eyes. As Valusin watched Akerduana rapidly approach, his armor was charred black by the deafening sonic boom, but his speed did not decrease but increased, and in the blink of an eye he had climbed the mountain. His lungs churned, a surge of air erupted, his chin stretched to its limit, and he opened his mouth to scream. As he let out a howl, the pleasure pushed him deeper and deeper into a more unrestrained indulgence that transcended limits and reason. Varusin's screams, mingled with unrestrained pleasure, amplified the sonic boom, striking Akerduana's very soul. The sounds of pain, despair, pleas, and rage intertwined and arose out of nowhere in Akerduana's mind, culminating in a climax. Hundreds of faces cried out in agony at the torture they were enduring, some pleading for release, others mocking in despair. Akerduana paused. "I will bring you peace." He pushed Thalima's state of mind to the 3rd level and lunged at Varusin. Varusin's eyes widened, and his lungs throbbed with a dull ache. Boom boom boom. The shockwave erupted, sending up plumes of black flames, and a rain of rubble rained down on the Astartes as they fought. Akerduana suddenly appeared in front of Valusin, saying, "You're too noisy." The two swords spun around, and the blade of the right palm slashed towards the sonic boom cannon. His wrist trembled slightly, and the sword's edge sliced through the cord. Weapon Master had a perfect grasp of force and angle, and the blade did not touch any other part of the sonic boom cannon. Valusin's hands were suddenly empty, the notes abruptly falling, leaving him feeling a profound sense of loss. Akerduana's left palm blade followed, slicing into Valusin's mouth and cutting the megaphone in two. Ah! A deep resentment flashed in Valusin's eyes. They were both her father's children, so why was there such a huge gap between them? Even though he received the blessing, he was still far from being like Akerduana. Jealousy surged in my mind, and the air rushing from my lungs to my throat filled my mouth. His trachea, chest, and lungs swelled up like an inflated balloon, followed by a muffled explosion inside his body. The mutated organs and twisted flesh exploded violently, scattering everywhere. Akerduana withdrew and retreated, his twin swords flashing as he swept away the filth. He glanced coldly at the ground, and the first noise, warrior, exploded into a pile of rubble. Akerduana turned, strode forward, and leapt into the noisy warrior. The Weapon Master wielded its twin swords, their deadly blades slicing through the throats of one noise warrior after another. Ulrich and Cadmus exchanged a glance. They had already heard that Akerduana was the strongest swordsman of the Emperor's children, and a dueling champion among the Astartes, along with Howard Fender, Thierry Vieira, Ezekiel Abaddon, Sigismund, and Cain. Having witnessed Akerduana easily defeat the Emperor's children who killed Dreadnought today, they directly realized just how powerful the Emperor's children champion is. They watched Akerduana warily as he approached. Even if they were well equipped and in good condition, they could not defeat Akerduana, especially since they only had combat knives and their armor was damaged to varying degrees. But iron hands will never yield to a traitor. "You can leave now," Akerduana said. "Traitor, show me what tricks you have now." Ulik looked around. I won't fall into your trap. Akerduana sighed inwardly. He had intended to protect the Iron Hands, but he hadn't expected them to be so wary. A Palatine Blades, her face contorted with anger, approached him. My lord, please allow me to kill them for you. No, Akerduana said to the Palatine Blades. I told them to leave. After saying that, he ignored Iron Hands and left. Palatine Blades exchanged a cold stare with Iron Hands, then followed the peerless swordsman away. Company commander, Cadmus called softly, watching Akerduana's retreating figure. Head to the nearest evacuation point, Yura said. We must retreat temporarily, regroup, and then take revenge on the traitors. 1016 Phoenix, I will take care of your cubs, and I will take care of the Sapphire King for you. In the 4th level of the Nation of Disorder, Space, Alistair Rorschach, the company commander of the 89th Raven Guard, knelt in the black mist and respectfully reported. Balsa Kuturi warned us when we were 3 kilometers away from the traitor that most of the Raven Guard had followed us in our retreat. A total of 5,260 Raven Guards followed me out. Nimrod nodded slightly. He remembered that the Loyalists were originally only 100 meters away from the ambush when they were hit by the traitors' concentrated fire. Caught off guard, tens of thousands of Loyalists died under the barrage of fire. Now that Balsa has given an early warning, the number of survivors has increased significantly, and most of them have followed Balsa away. Fortunately, the fleets of Sons of Horus, Emperor's Children, and World Eaters had left the Istvan system, leaving only portions of the fleets of Word Bearers, Iron Warriors, Alpha, and Night Lords to surround them. Nimrod knew that Horus Lupercal had ordered the fleet to leave in advance to create the illusion of resupply in order to make Ferrus Manus believe that the aircraft were there. The fleet centered around the Iron Fist unleashes its vengeful fury upon the traitorous fleet. I obey your command and guide most of the ships to follow me away. This included the 1,980 salamanders led by Cassian Vaughn. Upon hearing Cassian's name, Nimrod couldn't help but marvel at the coincidence of fate. Before Vulcan's return, he once commanded the 18th Legion on the orders of the Emperor. Cassian's fate was thus changed, and he did not die in the Battle of Tower Ross. However, he also lost the unique dreadnought Iron Dragon that Vulcan had personally crafted. In Nimrod's memory, Cassian even managed to withstand a lance hit thanks to Iron Dragon. Later, when the Ebony Dragon arrived at Istvan V to investigate the truth and search for Primarch, it was astonished to find that Cassian was still alive. Iron Dragon influenced the automatons to follow him, and his charisma attracted all his followers, eventually giving birth to the Flame Door followers, who were different from the mainstream doctrine of salamanders, the doctrine of Prometheus. They believed that Vulcan's power existed in any forged object, including those of enemies. However, this dangerous doctrine was completely eradicated by the imperial authorities after the Great Birthday celebration. It is a pity that Cassian lost Iron Dragon, but if he pledges allegiance to me, I can grant him new abilities. Sequence 6 level, its overall capabilities are comparable to Iron Dragon, only its defense and recovery abilities aren't quite as overpowered. As he pondered, Alistair continued his report. The current leaders of the Iron Hands are Ulick Brandon, the Iron Company commander of the 65th Company, and Flet Samadika and Sabik Wayland of the Iron Fathers. He commanded a fleet centered around the strike cruiser Sisyphus, consisting of 1,370 men. Nimrod nodded slightly. I didn't expect the Sisyphus to be brought out as well. Along with Nick and Asharokan, who's with Alistair, the whole crew is together. He recalled that under Iron Fathers' continued modifications, the Sisyphus transformed into a powerful warship far surpassing other ships of its class. Even more legendary are the crew members, who completed a series of incredible adventures, gathering vital intelligence for the Empire and bringing back crucial assets to address the crisis 10,000 years later. The Sisyphus first went to forge World Carver Cell Tower, which had been captured by the Word Bearers, and seized the strategic asset that was crucial to both the rebels and the Loyalists, Cryptos. Nikon Sarakin infiltrated the Forge World Hydra Chordate and wounded Fulgrim during his meeting with Perturabo. Their final adventure was to bring back the Primordial One maternal form containing all of Primarch's genetic material, which Robert Gilliman handed over to Dora Kal to study the Primordial Astartes. I am determined to obtain the Primordial One original. Cryptos is also very useful, and while Carver Cell Tower isn't a top-tier Forge World, it has many unique technologies. I should also become a cow while I'm at it, but now isn't the right time. Carver Cell Tower is a Forge World directly under Mars. Taking direct action will cause trouble after the Great Birthday celebration. Although it wasn't a major problem, now that he knew the Word Bearers had also nailed Cryptos and Carver Cell Tower, he had better options. As the true mentor of disorder, one must naturally make good use of the situation, using the pretext of fighting traitors to seize Forge World. Nimrod gathered his thoughts and leaned back on the throne. Open black lens bracket. The Iron Hands, having lost their fathers and yearning for revenge, are even more likely to become bullies. Close black lens bracket. However, there's a problem. They have to compete with Sapphire King for food. Nimrod recalled that the Order Shadow he had dispatched to the 52nd Expeditionary Fleet had brought back records of the galaxies it had traversed. When I have free time, I will visit them one by one and search for the treasures of Mimir. Even if you can't get all of it, you can at least get most of it. Venus certainly made a significant contribution, and it might be worthwhile for him to resolve the greatest threat plaguing the Iron Hands, souls. Having thought this through, Nimrod had already made his decision, he thought to himself. Open black lens bracket. Venus, rest in peace. I will take care of your cubs, and I will make good use of your discoveries. I will take care of Sapphire King for you. Close black lens bracket. Nimrod gathered his thoughts and gave the order. Take them and head to the eastern region of the Milky Way. Now that there are new potential partners, we should seize the opportunity. Follow your will. The churning black fog carried Alistair back to the stormy night. After the Night Lords and other legions publicly revealed their rebellious identities, Dorn and his forces planned a large-scale crackdown on the rebel legions within Terra. As Nimrod murmured, his eyes suddenly lit up. He spread his spirituality, touching Kion's spiritual sphere in the Terra. After confirming that no one was around, he pulled him into the Nation of Disorder. My lord. Kion bowed respectfully to the Black Emperor, who sat high on the throne. Zaglios Kane has accepted the role of Fabricator General of Mars and is actively working in Terra to gain the support of the Council of Terra and reclaim Mars. But Malkador and Lord Dornay did not have enough power to reclaim Mars from the Dark Mechanicum, so they adopted a blockade strategy, with the Imperial fleet intercepting warships traveling to and from Mars and cutting off its connection with the outside world. Kane hasn't given up. He's been actively seeking support from all sides, but recently his activity level has dropped significantly, which suggests he's made some progress. Nimrod heard Kion's worried words, not yet. The Emperor demanded that he join a secret war. Open black lens bracket. I wonder if Kane will sell the Imperial Guard again if Arkan isn't around. Close black lens bracket. In any case, he could not gain any real support. The Empire did not have enough power to strike Dark Mechanicum. When he has exhausted all options and finds no door, that's when I'll lend a helping hand. Offering help in times of need is always more valuable than adding to someone's already good fortune. Greater than 1017 Perturabo, Ryan also finds the Void Fortress. Following the massacre at Istvan V's landing point, the Sigillite and the Terra Guard will hunt down members of the rebel legions in Terra, Nimrod commanded, leaning back on his throne. You are to immediately proceed to the underground prison in Araby and search for the Night Lords, said former chief librarian, Phil Zarost. Nimrod knew that Zoshar wasn't the only one who discovered the 8th Legion's corruption, Fel had also discovered it. He also expressed concern about the future of the Legion librarians after the Council of Nicaea. So he approached Iago Seville Tower and asked him, the head of First Company, to make a clear decision. But Seville Tower didn't care about the librarian's fate. Fel's stubbornness angered him, and he knocked Fel to the ground. Fel angrily told Sevier Tower how degenerate the 8th Legion had become, but Sevier Tower took it as a complaint from a disgruntled Terraborn. Fel used psionic attacks, but Sevi Tower suppressed him with hidden psionic energy instead of killing him, banishing him from the Legion. Fel then returned to his birthplace underground in Araby, until Malkador sent men to find him not long afterward. Open black lens bracket. Without my intervention, Fair would have become Kion, the founding mentor of the Grey Knights. Close black lens bracket. When he thought of the Council of Nicaea, 14 chief librarians, including Fel, stood before him like knights. Open black lens bracket. Better to follow me than to be the Grand Master of Grey Knights. Close black lens bracket. Follow your will. At the same moment Kion was swallowed by the black mist, Istvan V's killing field was stained red with the blood of Astartes. 1,000 piles of corpses rose into towering columns of black smoke, while orange flames reflected on the molten glass sand. Fulgrim stuck out his tongue, tasting the greasy, ashen flavor of the dead. He watched as the tech priests of Dark Mechanicum rapidly constructed a sleek black platform, gleaming with a blood-red light. The base of the stands is a kilometer wide and consists of a series of cylinders with progressively smaller diameters. Fulgrim took a glittering, inlaid box from Eidolon, stepped toward the red light, and came before Horus Lupercal. Warmaster. He smiled and bowed, opening the box he carried with him. I've brought you a trophy. Horus looked at the head inside the box. It was gray and lifeless, its once shining silver eyes gone, leaving only bloody, mangled eye sockets. His jaw was agape, and a piece of bone fragment pierced through a depression on one side of his skull. Horus was horrified to see his former brother's body brutally mutilated. He suppressed his instinctive trembling, trying to hide his displeasure. "Well done, you didn't let me down. You kept your promise and killed one of our formidable enemies. I have one more gift." Two voices spoke simultaneously. He took the Forgebreaker from his waist. Warhammer handed it to Horus. One doesn't want to carry weapons that could kill his beloved brother, while the other despises mortal weapons and hopes that Fulgrim can completely let go of the past. Horus stiffly took the Forgebreaker. "Thank you, Fulgrim." As the sun ripped through the horizon, the reviewing stand stood amidst the ruins. 6 Primarchs ascended the penultimate platform, their cloaks billowing in the bloody winds of the Ugol heights. Omega, clad in dark green armor, stood on either side of Conrad Kurz, whose armor was a deep blue-black. Lorgar Aurelian stood proudly, his red cloak covering his gray armor like a shroud. Angron was restless like a wild beast, its armor stained with blood. Mortarion wore a hood and carried a scythe on his shoulder. Fulgrim, clad in pristine armor, appeared to have never stepped onto the battlefield. He wore a golden scale cloak over his shoulders, and a shimmering silver chainmail shirt covered his breastplate. His gaze swept over the Forgebreaker at Perturbo's waist. Warhammer, but his brother, with a somber expression, never looked at him. As the stars rose high, deafening cheers erupted over the Ugol heights. Amidst waves of cheers and shouts of worship, fireworks lit up the northern slope of the Ugol heights. A fiery phosphorescent line meandered across the ground, outlining the shape of a giant Horus's eye on the hillside. The towering Imperial-class Titan Judgment slowly lowered its massive head, and Horus slowly ascended the high platform. "My brave warriors." Warmaster's loud and powerful voice swept through the entire Astartes formation through the loudspeaker. "With strength and vision, we have defeated those who tried to stop us from achieving our great dreams. But we must move forward, otherwise victory would be meaningless." Horus raised the claws that Dark Mechanicum had forged for him and shouted into the air. "We will wage war against the Emperor's most impregnable fortress and prepare the road to Terra. This is not easy." Horus paused for a moment, letting his high spirits settle down. "Do you want to come with me, Warmaster?" The cheers soared into the sky and echoed for a long time. The roar of spacecraft raised clouds of dust as Warmaster's army set off from Istvan V. Lorgar Aurelian led the word-bearers to Anderman to meet with Robert Gilliman. World Eaters returned to Burt to replenish the lost military force. Inside the collapsed fortress, the roar of thrusters shook dust down from the ceiling and walls. Horus looked away. "I have a gift for you." He took out a piece of data slate and handed it to Perturbo. The punitive fleet dispatched by Dorn encountered the warp storm and became trapped in the FAL system. He used the power gift from his warp allies in the Temple of Davin to obtain the coordinates of the punishment fleet. Perturbo took the data slate, and a picture flashed through his mind. Fulgrim smiled and asked Dorn, "I'm curious, can you build a fortress that Perturbo can't breach?" Can. The image rapidly dimmed, and another image slowly appeared. Roger Dorn donned a gleaming medal, but his iron-gray armor remained bare. He stared blankly at the artist's painting. Iron Warrior's apothecary kneels in the dust to heal warrior as the Imperial Fist's banner flutters in the wind. His boots crushed the painting, burning it to ashes. He remained silent for a long time before slowly speaking. "No, I will return to the western part of the galaxy." Horus was taken aback. Perturbo, who had always resented the praise Dorne had received, was actually letting this opportunity slip by. "Before I returned to Olympia, I discovered a void fortress built by an ancient alien race. Now, Ryan has also found the void fortress and is leading his army there. I must return to the western part of the galaxy, bring it back, and possess it. This will give us an advantage in future wars." Horus nodded. Perturbo had abandoned his hatred for a more strategic purpose. Ryan was a formidable foe, so naturally he couldn't be obtained. The balance of power shifted between the two sides. "I believe you will succeed, bring it back, and help us accomplish this great cause." Perturbo walked out of Warmaster's temporary command room, exchanged a brief glance with Fulgrim and Mortarion who were walking towards him, and then strode away. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.